The Philippines says it may seek the help of the U.S. under a mutual defense treaty to protect its interests in the South China Sea amid a standoff with China. This after China's Navy chased off a Philippine vessel that was within the Philippines' internationally recognized waters. The BBC's Howard Johnson in Manila.
This is all part of a war of words that's been going on now for 3 weeks. This is the latest episode. What happened was ABS-CBN were on this civilian ship when they were approaching a place called Ayungin Shoal. They were going there to visit Philippine military who are based there. But when they approached, they were chased away by these Chinese Navy catamarans. Missile capable, they're called shipwreckers. And these are very fast catamarans, and they were pushed away from the area.
The United States has said that it would stand by the Philippines amid that dispute with China. News and analysis at townhall.com. A new airline is poised for takeoff, and it will offer bargain basement fares.
Even as traditional air carriers are still recovering from the coronavirus pandemic, a new domestic airline will launch this month. Avilo Airlines will serve airports in 12 western states after delaying its launch until demand for air travel picked up in recent months. Avilo's inaugural flights will offer fares for just $19.
That's correspondent Ken Lorman. Southwest Airlines bringing back more than 2,700 flight attendants who took leave of absences last year. The latest sign the industry feels confident that travel is rebounding after being hammered over the past year by the coronavirus pandemic. A Southwest spokesman says the flight attendants will be recalled effective June 1st. And just last week, Southwest said that it would be recalling more than 200 pilots. More on these stories at townhall.com.
The champ is here! The champ is here! The champ is here! The champ is here!
Let me tell you something you already know. The world ain't all sunshine and rainbows. It's a very mean and nasty place, and I don't care how tough you are, it will beat you to your knees and keep you there permanently if you let it. You, me, or nobody is gonna hit as hard as life. But it ain't about how hard you hit. It's about how hard you can get hit and keep moving forward. How much you can take and keep moving forward. That's how winning is done.
When the moon hits your eye like a big pizza pie, that's amore. When the world seems to shine like you've had too much wine, that's amore.
An absolute pleasure once again to be back with you on the airwaves across southeastern North Carolina on the Big Talker 106.7 FM at BigTalkerFM.com as we bring you into our Freedom Friday broadcast live from the Lone Star State in Arlington, Texas. It is Friday, April 9th, 2021. You can find our video portion of the broadcast through social media on Facebook and Twitter at The Big Talker 106.7 FM. Subscribe to our new YouTube channel and pick up a podcast version of the show on Spotify and through my website at joecats.com. That's JOECATS.com. So as we get rocking and rolling here on this Freedom Friday across the Cape Fear region and here in the Lone Star State, our buddy TK Turbo producing the show back home atop the Murkinson building. I just want to give a tip of the cap to TK and, of course, our friend Chad Adams for filling in yesterday for myself as a guest host of the program so we can get the travel day out of the way. We had around, a 3-hour baseball practice yesterday as our Coastal Carolina Chanticleers kind of get back into the swing of things following about a 10-day break due to some COVID positive tests among the team. And they have, in fact, 3 or 4 guys that did not make the trip as they remain quarantined, not necessarily sick or showing any symptoms, but here in this wild world we're living in, nonetheless, we're going to be a little short-handed as we get set to take on the Mavericks of UT Arlington. And that 3-game series will begin tomorrow and will continue through Sunday. And then Monday morning we'll be back here in Arlington for the final game of the series. We'll also have that remote broadcast once again on Monday for you back home home, and then the travel evening, and we'll be hopefully back in the studio by Tuesday for the most listened to, entertaining, and informative talk program across southeastern North Carolina. So as we have gone to now 3 different locations over this spring to broadcast back to the Carolina coast, we will continue with what we have created as far as a tradition goes of some sort, and that each time we've been with you, whether it be in Morgantown, West Virginia, or Lafayette, Louisiana, and now here in Arlington, Texas. We'll give you a little history of the area in which we are broadcasting from, and we'll do that in the second segment of our show today. And we made our way down here first thing Thursday morning, so I didn't get a chance to tune into what Chad had to say across the 3 hours, but I know he spoke with a few folks, and of course it brings you the news and information through not only his point of view, but in his own unique way, which is why we, of course, love Chad and the contributions that he makes to what we do during the morning program, and of course overseeing the company as a whole, Red Wolf Broadcasting Corporation, as we try to continue our efforts to grow bigger, faster, and stronger, so we stay in the community for a long, long time in the years ahead. Great to have Chad with us yesterday, and in fact, he'll be with us again here this morning, just after 8 o'clock your time back home on the East Coast. So we got here around lunchtime Thursday. Didn't do much yesterday, as a little, just out of sorts with the hour back and the long travel morning, and watched a little bit of the first round of the Masters at Augusta. And later on today, as our hotel at the Hilton Garden Inn in Arlington is right across the street from the Six Flags amusement park here in Arlington, and within a rock's throw of the Dallas Cowboys stadium at AT&T Stadium in Arlington, along with the new Texas Rangers ballpark. And while I'm not necessarily wanting to give Major League Baseball any of my money or viewing pleasure at this point, well, the Texas Rangers organization has caused a bit of a stir since the beginning of the baseball season, when they announced, of course, that they would be reopening their ballpark with no capacity limits for the start of the year. Just a few days ago, they had opening day against the Toronto Blue Jays, and there was 38,000 fans in attendance for that ball game. And in fact, Texas is actually at home tonight. They play the San Diego Padres, and given that we have another practice day today with no games this evening, I may venture my way over to the new Texas Rangers baseball stadium and catch tonight's game between the Rangers and Padres. We'll see how it all shakes out. But yesterday, as we got settled in, I did have some Texas barbecue last night with my friend Richard Battle. Richard came over from Austin, which is about a 3-hour ride, and we broke bread and had a chance to meet in person. Given that he's been on the show for several months now on Wednesdays, to get a chance to meet face-to-face was quite the pleasure. Richard's a great guy, and he's been joining our radio program every Wednesday for the past several months. And this is one of the fun perks of this thing that we're doing. Yeah, having to wake up an extra hour early here today due to the time change. I can complain about this, that, and the other, all day, but no one's going to listen. So what we try to do here on the Big Talker FM is, as our good friend Lenny Simpson says so famously, we try to make lemonade out of lemons, whether they're good lemons or bad lemons, and we want to adapt and adjust to everything that is thrown our way, and that's one of the fun perks of what we get to do here, in this travel time in the busy part of the spring that I've been used to for the last several years. Having the opportunity to meet, talk, and visit with folks from all over the country, that's no doubt one of the fun perks of what we get to do in this thing that we got going here on the Big Talker FM. It is a Freedom Friday here on the Big Talker, and every Friday just after 7:30, of course, by now, if you've tuned into the program at all over the past several years, you know that, of course, we dedicate time in the first hour of our show just after 7:30 Eastern Time to highlight stories of service, the men and women who are serving our country or have served, or those who have paid the ultimate sacrifice. And I was passed along a few stories this week to remember a young man who was killed on this day back in 2004 while serving our country in Iraq. Air Force Airman First Class Antoine J. Holt will be featured on this morning's Salute to Service segment in about 20 minutes from right now. He passed away on April 10th of 2004, serving during Operation Iraqi Freedom. The 20-year-old from Kennesaw, Georgia, was assigned to the 603rd Air Control Squadron at Aviano Air Force Base in Italy, and he died on this day in 2004 when his tent was hit during a mortar attack at Balad Airfield in Iraq. And we will highlight the story of Air Force Airman First Class Antoine J. Holt just after 7:30 this morning as our featured highlighted veteran and service member during our Freedom Friday segment here on the Big Talker FM. Again, our buddy Chad Adams will also be with us just after 8 o'clock. Yael Asowski will also join the program, as he does every Friday morning just after 9:30. And during the middle of our broadcast here today, we're really going to hone in on, of course, President Biden's announcement yesterday surrounding gun control in our country, laying out several executive orders and making a few eye-opening comments during that brief news announcement on Thursday afternoon. And immediately, as I got off the plane in Dallas yesterday, I got to social media. I saw some of the things that he was laying out. And while I'm not, versed necessarily in Second Amendment and gun-related policy, we know a lot of people who are, and immediately we got the wheels turning. And during the middle of our broadcast here today, we're really going to hone in on some of these policies that President Biden is promoting and some of the efforts in and throughout the country, of course, to defend our individual liberties guaranteed by the Constitution, which includes, of course, the right to bear arms under the Second Amendment. Our friend Paul Vallone will also be with us just after 8:30. He is the host of Guns, Politics, and Freedom. His weekly broadcast airs on Saturday afternoons at 1 p.m. on the Big Talker FM. Paul serves as the head of the organization known as Grassroots North Carolina. They are devoted to educating the public on firearm safety policy and, of course, defending those individual rights guaranteed by the Constitution. We'll get Paul's take on the announcement yesterday, the latest push by the government to chip away at our rights under the Constitution. They were laid out Thursday when President Biden unveiled a set of executive orders and legislative proposals on gun control, calling gun violence a public health crisis and claiming that his administration's actions would not trample over your Second Amendment rights. We'll hear from Paul Vallone just after 8:30 this morning. And to piggyback off that conversation, a reporter by the name of Matthew LaRosiere will also be joining the show just after 9 o'clock. He writes about the law, guns, and liberty for a living. He's the director of legal policy at the Firearms Policy Coalition. He'll be with us also here this morning just after 9 o'clock to discuss some of the details that were released by Grandpa Joe on Thursday. We're 17 minutes past the hour here on the Big Talker FM, 7:17 on the East Coast, 6:17 here in Arlington, Texas, local time as we broadcast to you on this Freedom Friday, April 9th, 2021. When we get back, we'll give you a little history lesson as to where we are here this morning in Arlington, and we look forward to doing that with you after the break here on the Big Talker FM.
It ain't no joke, I'd like to buy the world a token, teach the world to sing in perfect harmony, and teach the world to snuff the fires.
We wouldn't sell you a dining room table, so don't buy a medical device from a furniture store. US Med Express is Wilmington's leading supplier of golden technology lift and sleep chairs, carrying a variety of models in our showroom at 1733 Dawson Street. Our chairs lead the industry in power lift recliner features and advances in technology. Our chairs are FDA certified as medical devices, which means it's 100% tax deductible and helps with a number of medical conditions, including arthritis, poor circulation, and sleep apnea. Give us a call today at 910-500-6162 or stop by and experience our chairs for yourself at 1733 Dawson Street. That's 910-500-6162. 1733 Dawson Street in Wilmington. US Med Express.
Hey, this is Matt Ham, co-founder of Viewprint Faith and Personal Development. Join us for Wake Up Our Faith, a real conversation about living out your faith between Sundays, streaming live every Wednesday at 11 a.m. on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter. Catch the replay every Saturday and Sunday at 8 a.m. on Wilmington's Big Talker 106.7 FM. Stop by and visit us on the web at uprint.life.
Wake up to Good Morning Carolina, weekdays at 5:30 a.m.
And Good Morning Carolina. It is a very busy news morning today. I'm Donna Gregory.
And I'm Jeff Rivenbark. We're glad you're starting your Tuesday with us.
Be prepared and ready to go for the day ahead.
For the time being, we are dry and quiet, but we are dealing with some patchy fog.
And catch up with the overnight news you need to know before heading out the door.
We'll have more details and more live coverage in just a few moments.
Get up early for Good Morning Carolina, weekdays at 5:30 a.m.
One Love Tennis started in 2013 to give back to young boys and girls. We now go through 460 kids a week that are learning about life skills, learning to succeed in life through academics and tennis. Putting those two together, if you do them well, you can write your own ticket. To get involved in this program, go to our website, one-love-tennis.org.
Hey guys, this is Alan Perry from Perry's Emporium, and it's my annual Diamond Expo. And guys, I've got millions of dollars in diamond inventory for you to choose from this month. Loose diamonds, diamond fashion, diamond engagement rings, and so much more. It's raining diamonds here at Perry's Emporium in the month of April, so don't miss out. Come see me this month at the corner of Shipyard Independence or online at perrysemporium.com for the biggest diamond expo ever at Perry's Emporium. I'll see you when you get here. Perry's Emporium at the corner of Shipyard Independence and on the web at perrysemporium.com.
All right, we're back here on the Big Talker FM, 21 minutes past the hour. Great to be with you here from Arlington, Texas, as we continue our Freedom Friday broadcast inside the first hour of our show. We will salute to service just after 7:30 here, as we do each and every Friday on the Big Talker FM. So a little background on where we're broadcasting from here this morning in Arlington, Texas, as part of our travels with the Coastal Carolina University baseball team. Arlington and its history, very complex, and its identity has evolved for, well, hundreds of years since first recorded history highlighting the first non-Indian settlements here dating back to the 1840s. It's been a frontier outpost, an agricultural center, a site of several battles, of course, between the colonialists and Native Americans, a mecca for horse racing and gambling. It was once famed for its mineral waters and has long been a college town. In fact, Arlington houses 3 universities and colleges within its city limits, also hosts major industrial entities such as the Arlington GM Assembly Plant, and today, of course, is known for its Major League Baseball and amusement attractions, along with the home of the Dallas Cowboys. A high-tech component to its economy here in Arlington, sandwiched between Fort Worth and the Dallas metro area, includes nanotechnology research, computer chip manufacturing, and a technology incubator, as this area leads research into the world of commerce all around the U.S. of A. Arlington forms part of the Mid-Cities region of Texas between Dallas and Fort Worth. According to some Census Bureau estimates, back in 2019, the city had a population of nearly 400,000, the 49th most populous city in the United States, and the 7th most populous city in the state of Texas. As I made mention, the first non-Indian settlements here date back to the 1840s. Indeed, Arlington began as the failed Bird's Fort, evolving into the site of a Texas Ranger post authorized by Republic President Sam Houston to serve as a dividing line between settlers and a collection of tribes driven to the area by westward expansion. The Republic of Texas signed its first ever peace treaty in 1843 at Bird's Fort with 9 tribes, including the Cherokee, Delaware, Biloxi, Caddo, K'iche', and Waco representatives. Caddo tribes dominated early settlements in the area, and they were the first residents of this region. camping in such an abundance of settlements that one local waterway, Village Creek, was named for their presence. Early Caddos practiced agriculture near the waterway, their longtime presence established by numerous archaeological digs. Caddo settlements were visited by the first European explorers to the area, including Cabeza de Vaca in 1535 and La Salle in 1689, and by Texas Rangers, who defeated those tribes in the Battle of Village Creek in 1841. These lands became part of the vast plantation holdings of Colonel Middleton Tate Johnson, who arrived in 1846 from the Mexican War and took command of a Texas Rangers company at what became known as Johnson Station. The city of Arlington was founded in 1876 along the Texas and Pacific Railway. The city was named after General Robert E. Lee's Arlington House in Arlington County, Virginia. Arlington grew as a cotton ginning and farming center and was incorporated on April 21, 1884. The city would boast water, electricity, natural gas, and telephone services by 1910. By 1925, the city's population was estimated at just over 3,000, well under the population of Dallas and Fort Worth at the time. And in 1929, a horse racing track called Arlington Downs was constructed by W.T. Wagner close by the Speakeasy. Gambling was still illegal, but people were making bets regardless. Wagner and his sons campaigned to make betting legal, and in 1933, the state issued its first legal gambling permit to Arlington Downs. The 1940s brought World War II to the forefront, and many families around Texas moved to Arlington to find jobs. Before World War II, the city's population had grown to over 4,000, and the war kick-started a manufacturing revolution in Texas. Arlington, of course, was between the biggest aerospace engineering hubs in Texas at the time, between Dallas and Fort Worth. Arlington became one of the boomburgs, the extremely fast-growing suburbs of the post-World War II era. By 1961, attractions like Six Flags Over Texas had opened in Arlington. In 1972, the Washington Senators baseball team relocated to Arlington and began play as the Texas Rangers. And of course, in 2009, the Dallas Cowboys began to play at the newly constructed Cowboys Stadium, now known as AT&T Stadium. In October of 2019, Arlington was chosen out of several major U.S. cities to become the permanent home of the $150 million National Medal of Honor Museum. Construction of the museum is set to be completed in 2024. So a little background this morning as we broadcast to you from Arlington, Texas, as part of our efforts as we travel all across the country this spring with the Coastal Carolina University baseball team to get you to know a little bit more about some of the places that we get to visit and have an opportunity to meet and talk with so many great people from across the country. And we had a chance to do that yesterday with our good friend Richard Battle, who appears on our show on Wednesdays during the 9 o'clock hour, author of the book Navigating Life's Journey, Common Sense in Uncommon Times. Topping the news here this morning, of course, is the decision by President Joe Biden to unveil a number of executive actions that he plans to take surrounding gun control, calling gun violence in the country a public health crisis yesterday, and trying to persuade the American people that, in fact, his administration's actions will not infringe on your Second Amendment rights. Yesterday, the 46th Commander-in-Chief made these remarks in the Rose Garden on the grounds of the White House, joined by Vice President Kamala Harris. One of the few eye-opening comments that the Commander-in-Chief made yesterday had to do with, well, of course, amending the Constitution and saying that no amendment to the United States Constitution is absolute. From there, he listed a few items that he would like to take up through executive action, also claiming that this idea in moving forward with policies related to gun control, in his eyes, are, quote, bizarre, to suggest that some of these things were recommending are contrary to the Constitution. No amendment is absolute. I mean, listen to this guy. Joe Biden laying out his plans because he knows he doesn't have the votes in Congress. So he wants to move forward, of course, with executive actions with a focus, of course, this go around on the Second Amendment and your firearms. Now, while Grandpa Joe is correct in saying that no amendment to the Constitution is absolute, he's correct in saying that, in that there are processes and procedures within our government to, in fact, amend the Constitution. The only complete lie here and fabrication is the fact that the Constitution was not meant to be amended through executive action. In fact, yesterday, Grandpa Joe, who repeatedly called the ATF the AFT when naming the new head of the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms, kept saying repeatedly that the AFT would have a new leader based on his announcement, not the ATF, the AFT, but who's to say it's not the AFT under Joe Biden's world that we're living in. Elected officials, rather, do in fact have opportunities to change the Constitution, but not through executive action. And this was, of course, after Joe Biden told us that his actions are not infringing on our Second Amendment rights. Then he tells us no amendment is absolute. It's a very confusing situation if you're trying to listen in to pick up on the context of what he's saying and why he's saying it, because he's a very confusing man when he's unable to piece together a full sentence with any type of coherency, speaking back and forth out of both sides of his mouth. And to give you a little update on how lawmakers, of course, can move forward with amending the Constitution, processes in place, as indeed no amendment in the Constitution is absolute, but it takes 2/3 of a majority vote in both the House of Representatives and the Senate, or by a constitutional convention called for by 2/3 of the state legislatures to, in fact, amend the United States Constitution. Joe Biden has decided he wants to do that through executive action. And later on this morning, we'll have two guests on the program, Paul Vallone from Grassroots North Carolina and Matt Leoseri from Gun Policy Coalition, to talk about just how they believe this is a slippery slope that will ultimately move into a direction where legal, law-abiding firearm owners will have their rights infringed upon. Looking forward to that conversation that will take place during the second and third hours of our show here on this Freedom Friday. When we get back, it is a Freedom Friday, and our weekly Salute to Service segment will come your way as we highlight stories of service of the men and women who serve our country in our armed forces. Our weekly Salute to Service segment comes your way next.
That she's back in the atmosphere with drops of Jupiter in her head.
Hello, I'm Jeff Rivenbark with WWA News. Authorities say a man opened fire yesterday afternoon at a Texas cabinet-making company where he worked, killing one person and wounding 5 others. A police statement says 27-year-old Larry Winston Bolin of Iola, Texas, has been charged with murder and being held on a $1 million bond. Authorities say Bolin shot and wounded a state trooper before he was arrested. 2 of the 5 people wounded at the cabinet business are in critical condition. The 3 others and the trooper are in serious but stable condition. Police say Bolin worked at the company. The town of Charlotte has turned an abandoned building into a vaccination site. During Hurricane Florence, parts of Coastal Cinema's roof were torn off. It's now shut down with a parking lot being leased for COVID-19 vaccinations. The National Guard and Brunswick County vaccinate about 500 people each day. Emergency Management Director Edward Conrose says it's an ideal location with a large parking lot that can serve many people at once. Another big festival in the area canceled again because of the pandemic. The Blueberry Festival in Burgaw will not happen this year. Town leaders say they made the decision to cancel in an effort to protect vendors, volunteers, and visitors. The event typically attracts 40,000 people, and the current state mandate prohibits gatherings of that size. However, local blueberry farmers will be allowed to sell their blueberries at the Burgaw Courthouse Square on Saturday, June 19th. And weather forecasters are predicting an above-normal hurricane season this year. Colorado State University is calling for 17 named storms, 8 hurricanes, and 4 major hurricanes. The seasonal average is 12 named storms, 6 hurricanes, and 3 major hurricanes. Current warm sea surface temperatures in the subtropic Atlantic is driving the above-average probability. For more on these stories, head over to WWAYTV3.com. I'm Jeff Rivenbark. Have a great day.
Happy Friday, everybody. I'm WWAY meteorologist Mel Carpenter with your Storm Track 3 forecast. We're going to see another day with warm temperatures getting back into the upper 70s and low 80s across those inland communities. Highs along the immediate coastline will top off in the middle 70s. And we're going to see a mixture of sunshine and clouds throughout the afternoon hours today with a chance for some hit or miss showers and even isolated thunderstorms possible as we get into the second half of the day. But again, most places are going to stay dry, and late tonight, our temperatures drop back down into the upper 50s and the low 60s. Get your full forecast on WWAY and WWAYTV3.com.
This news and weather is brought to you by Two Men and a Truck. For your free quote, go to twomenandatruck.com. twomenandatruck.com.
Got the call to leave today. My team and I are gone away. Where to, how long? Well, that's a need to know. You can bet on us, 'cause we're good to go. I'm a patriot. I bleed red, white.
It is a Freedom Friday here on the Big Talker FM, and every Friday morning just after 7:30, we tell stories of service for the men and women who serve our country in our armed forces. We thank our friends over at Signal Fire Media, our buddies Rob Renz, Matt Mylott, and Evan Anderson for helping contribute to this segment. A few times a month. I also want to tip my cap to others who contact me with stories of service through emails and other sorts of resources that they provide. I would encourage you to message us, whether it be through Facebook, social media, through email, or by phone call. If you would like to have yourself or your family member, friend, neighbor, member of the community highlighted during our Freedom Friday segment here on the Big Talker FM just after 7:30 on Friday mornings. I was passed along a few stories to remember a young man this morning who was killed on this day back in 2004 while serving our country in Iraq. Today we salute Airman First Class Antoine Holt, who was killed when he was 20 years old on this day in 2004 while serving with the 603rd Air Control Squadron at Aviano Air Base in Italy is where he was stationed. He died of his injuries sustained after a mortar round hit his tent at Balad Air Force Base in Iraq on this day, April 10th, in 2004, while serving during Operation Iraqi Freedom. Airman First Class Antoine Holt died from injuries received April 10th when an enemy mortar struck his tent at Balad Air Force Base in Iraq. 2 other airmen in the tent were injured, one seriously. Holt, who is from Kennesaw, Georgia, and the other 2 airmen were deployed to Iraq, again from the 603rd Air Control Squadron at Aviano Air Force Base in Italy. Among those also wounded in the attack include Airman First Class Scott Palomino, who was 19 years at the time, and subsequently his left leg was amputated below the knee. The other airman, whose name was not released, was treated for minor injuries. On the day after the attack, an Air Force MQ-1 Predator, the armed version of the unmanned aerial vehicle, was flying with a U.S. flag in Holt's honor when it attacked and killed 2 insurgents who were staging another mortar attack on the base. That flag was delivered to Holt's family, as announced by the U.S. Central Command Air Forces. Airman First Class Antoine Holt's primary goal in life, in the words of his wife, was to touch as many lives as he could. That's all he ever wanted. Holt, who died April 9th in a mortar attack on Balad Air Force Base in Iraq, obviously succeeded. More than 1,000 people paid their respects at a memorial service at his home base. Among them were members of the 603rd Air Control Squadron, not currently deployed to Iraq, and family members who made the trip from Atlanta. But there were plenty of others as well. His mother, Courtney Garman, said she was overwhelmed by the show of support for her son, who died 2 months shy of his 21st birthday. She told the gathering that it helped her understand why he loved being in the Air Force. His father, Michael Holt, said a similar service in the States drew large numbers of people as well. That family in Aviano included his wife, Patricia, and a 19-month-old daughter, Carmen. Patricia Holt said she was happy to have the opportunity to have known Antoine, who was more than just my husband, more than my soulmate, my partner. He was my best friend. She said the world was better with her husband around and worse off now that he's gone. How sad is it for the world to lose such an inspiration? One of those Antoine Holt inspired was fellow Airman First Class Javaris Graham. He set the mark on how an airman should conduct himself, Graham said. He spoke of how Holt got the nickname Stitch. The two were among those pulling guard duty in nearby Manigago during an exercise. Holt cut his arm and leg on wire while trying to apprehend someone coming through the perimeter. He made the trip to the medic, came back with one stitch, smiling at the memory. Holt deployed to Iraq with the rest of the 603rd Squadron, one of the two air control squadrons in Europe. The 603rd Sister Squadron at Aviano, the 510th Fighter Squadron, and 555th Fighter Squadron have served in the skies over Iraq. In fact, Brigadier General Mike Warden, commander of the 31st Fighter Wing at Aviano, said the flag given to the Holt family was carried aboard an F-16 that took part in a bombing run following Holt's death. A precision-guided bomb was dropped on the ground where the mortar was fired, creating a huge crater. But not as big as one of the Holt's passing left with the 603rd and his family. Words can't describe the feeling, Patricia Holt said, and I can't say enough about my best friend. His dad, who also served in the Army, had a few things to say following his death. Antoine was really proud of technical school and was always interested in academics, said Michael Holt. He would call and voice to me how he was trying to finish first in his class. He would say he's got a chance and would always fill me in on where he stood and what level he was on. Antoine was known for his academic excellence while growing up and in turn was enticed to join the Air Force for the opportunity to receive a free education. When he first came to me while thinking about enlisting, I was against it, said Michael. Antoine's brain was a gift. I wanted him to focus on that. Michael respected that Antoine wanted to take his own path despite his concerns stemming from his own 20 years of service in the U.S. Army. Antoine kept his family close with frequent phone calls, although he was serving in his country far away from home. The day my son passed, he had called me that morning, said Michael. Before the call ended, he told me that he had a meeting and would call back after. All of Antoine's siblings wanted to talk to him before the phone call ended, but they never got the chance. After the call, Antoine was killed when his tent was hit by the mortar attack on April 9th, 2004. You sign a contract to put your life on the line for your country, said Michael. It's one of the top things you're signing up to do, and you have to be aware of that. You never think it's going to be someone close to you, but it could be anyone. Today we salute the life of then 20-year-old Air Force First Class Antoine Holt of Kennesaw, Georgia, who was killed on this day back in 2004 after he died of his injuries sustained following a mortar round hitting his tent at Balad Air Force Base in Iraq. Today we salute Air Force Airman First Class Antoine Holt as our featured service member, a part of our Freedom Friday segment here on the Big Talker FM.
I got the call to leave today. My team and I are going away. Where to, how long? Well, that's a need to know. You can bet on us, 'cause we're good to go. I'm a patriot. I bleed red, white, and blue. I'm a patriot, American through and through. And I'll fight for this land I love, from the sea, the ground, or from high above. I'm a patriot. It's tough at home, but they know the drill. We've been doing it for years. Goodbyes at the terminal gate, little faces washed with tears. Well, it's plain to see it's my family. They pay a price too, and it shows. It's the fear in their eyes, it's my baby's cries, praying that I come back home. I'm a patriot. I bleed red, white, and blue. I'm a patriot, American through and through. And I'll fight for this land I love, from the sea, the ground, or from high above, 'cause I'm a patriot. Folks always ask me how it feels defending my country. I'm proud to fight for the stars and stripes, 'cause freedom isn't free. It's not will I live or will I die, but will I let my brothers down? Can I live with what I've seen and done? Will I even be around? It's hard to see and it's killing me, but the price I can't let show. It's a pain in my eyes, it's my alibis. I wonder if I come back home. I'm a patriot. I bleed red, white, and blue. I'm a patriot, American, tried and true. And I'll fight for this land I love, from the sea, the ground, or from high above, 'cause I'm a patriot. I bleed red, white, and blue. I'm a patriot. Damn right my heart beats true. I'm a patriot.
All right, spring is in full swing. There's no better time to freshen up your home than right now. And our friends at Blinds.com are giving you up to 35% off every single thing site-wide. It's simple. You order online, free shipping, guaranteed perfect fit, whether you're a do-it-yourselfer or you allow them to handle the install. Just go to Blinds.com right now to shop their brand new deals, perfect for your spring home refresh, with up to 35% off everything: blinds, shades, interior shutters, and even outdoor shades. Rules and restrictions may apply.
Finding great candidates to hire can be like, well, trying to find a needle in a haystack, but not with ZipRecruiter. Its powerful technology actively finds and invites qualified candidates to apply to your job. So while other companies might deliver a lot of hay, ZipRecruiter finds you the needle in the haystack.
See why 4 out of 5 employers who post a job on ZipRecruiter get a quality candidate within the first day. Try ZipRecruiter for free at ZipRecruiter.com/free. That's ZipRecruiter.com/free.
Besides my involvement in prodigal recovery, I'm also in the construction business. I say that to say this. When we have tropical storms or hurricanes, the real hard, difficult, expensive, and dangerous work is usually the result of trees falling on homes or other personal property. Hurricane season is not the only time to get prepared for this. As a matter of fact, it's before and after hurricane season that you need to get prepared. My son Chris started his tree business called Climb Pro Expert Tree Care after Hurricane Florence. Chris has all the equipment and manpower to take on even the most challenging jobs. With over 20 years of combined experience, Climb Pro LLC can safely remove any unwanted hazardous trees from your property. They also offer tree pruning, elevation, deadwood removal, and other expert tree care services. Don't wait until you have a tree emergency. Visit climbpro.com, that's climb with a K. Check them out on Facebook or call Chris Markley at 910-540-5249. Mention this ad for a 10% discount.
The Wilmington Cape Fear Home Builders Association serves as the advocate for the building industry, advancing professionalism and promoting community involvement. We are a positive force for responsible growth while protecting property rights and the privilege of home ownership. 3 out of every 5 jobs is touched in some manner by construction in our region. Growth generates jobs, maintains our property values, and builds and updates our infrastructure. Join us Friday mornings for the Construction Connection with the Wilmington Cape Fear Home Builders Association and the Big Talker FM.
Government has become too big, too overtaxing, and is constantly over-regulating every aspect of your life.
If you agree with that, tune in to Consumer Choice Radio every Saturday at 10 a.m. here on the Big Talker 106.7 FM with me, Yael Osowski.
And me, David Clement. For an hour, you'll get expert analysis on what the government is sinking its teeth into next and how you, as a consumer, can push back.
ConsumerChoiceRadio.com.
And we are coming to you from the state of Texas this morning, here on the Big Talker 106.7 FM, at BigTalkerFM.com, of course. You can find us at 910-299-7535 if you'd like to call into the program here over the next few minutes before we welcome Chad Adams back to the airwaves after Chad filled in for us during our travel day here to Arlington. Arrived around lunchtime yesterday at the Dallas-Fort Worth Airport and really just hung around the hotel. Had a chance to meet up with a frequent guest to our program, Richard Battle, who made the trip from Austin up to this area between Dallas and Fort Worth to enjoy some Texas barbecue and conversation. And all in the while this was going on, of course, Grandpa Joe was laying out his executive actions that he plans to take surrounding gun control in our country. As you hear, every news outlet and newscast starts off with, of course, gun violence going on across the country. And this is, the latest, topic that is once again being weaponized by those in the media. And the big disconnect between those law-abiding firearm owners throughout the country, about 99% of you, of course, never going to commit a crime with a firearm in your possession, and as the President of the United States mentioned yesterday, the public health crisis that we are now facing, under and due to the result of gun violence and the rise that we have seen across the country. 910-299-7535 is our number. Caller, you're with us this morning. I hope all is well on your end.
I'm sorry. He hung up before I could get the text to you, sir.
All right, so TK, here we go. 910-299-7535 is our number if you'd like to call in to the show as we highlight once again. What was that? Hello?
Nope.
Well, not sure what TK's doing over there, so we're just going to continue here on the Big Talker FM. Our phone number is 910-299-7535. If you call in and you hear the broadcast, that means you're on hold, and just hold the line till we bring you in, of course, as we move up until 10 o'clock here this morning. Among some of the other things going on across the news here today, Florida Governor Ron DeSantis has filed a lawsuit through the state of Florida against the federal government demanding that the cruise lines will be allowed to resume operation from the United States immediately. And again, this goes to the disconnect across the country as some states, including where we're broadcasting from here in the state of Texas, are moving forward with life as we once knew it, eliminating a lot of the government mandates. That doesn't mean that private businesses and private citizens, can't continue to take, and put into their risk assessment, of course. What this means is that they are no longer going to mandate things from the government to control you as far as the way in which you act on a day-to-day basis, whether it be, through your work. Amazing to me that so many pieces of our population were just months into this pandemic, particularly after we started to get some science data and information, on this virus, how people were still, in fact, okay with the fact they were considered non-essential. I was having this conversation yesterday, and if you were driving around town, as far as how we are continuing to incentivize people to stay home and no longer look for work, I mean, it is evident across the city of Wilmington and throughout many other places across the country at this point. Help wanted signs on nearly every storefront window, particularly within the hospitality industry. And I get it, where we live, it's a tourist-heavy area and attraction, and during the spring, summer, and fall months, we see massive influx of people from all over the country, and many of these businesses need the extra help. Well, right now, they're having trouble just to fill up their payroll with the normal amount of people that would typically work within their business. And why is that? Well, because we continue to add on that extra income through the unemployment benefits that are offered to those folks out there who have been able to stay home for the better part of the last several months while the government continues to print money and pay these folks a good chunk of change to stay home rather than getting back into the workforce. I mean, you go anywhere across the city of Wilmington and throughout the beach towns and within our region, help wanted signs anywhere and everywhere where you see a local business, particularly within the hospitality industry. Now, I have a few friends back home who have teenage kids, and they are utilizing this opportunity because many college-age kids and young adults are staying home because, again, they're getting that money from unemployment. Now's the time for those 16, 17, 18-year-old kids to grab the bull by the horn, and you want an early opportunity to enter the workforce and earn some extra income, good income throughout the summer months with things being so busy. Now's the time that you could really get in the ground level on some of these small businesses and utilize that time to showcase your work ethic and, of course, not only earn some income, but also maybe, steer yourself in a direction that you never knew you might want to go. And that's the beauty about some of these early experiences in one's life that can help shape and direct you into a completely different direction than maybe what you had planned or what you were thinking about as far as what your future holds. So as Florida Governor Ron DeSantis files a lawsuit in the state of Florida against the federal government demanding that the cruise lines be allowed to resume in the United States, states like Texas, where we're broadcasting from, of course, completely open and full throttle. Others, in that gray area. North Carolina, I would say, is like 75, maybe 80% in the green as far as, moving forward with being open and back into some type of normal way of life. Now some of the outdoor capacity limits and other restrictions on venues and certain things we would like to see loosened and further uplifted, these executive orders that have been in place for the last several months. But then you could look at the other side of the spectrum and look at places like California, New York, and elsewhere that remain virtually locked down and have been for the better part of the past year right now. So Governor Ron DeSantis files this lawsuit, and earlier this week, in fact, Governor Cooper, our king of the state of North Carolina, was asked not once but twice about this vaccine passport in North Carolina. And as the governor does, and in typical fashion, very vague on the details until he wants to stand in front of a microphone and deliver executive orders or other sorts of announcements that restrict our ability to operate freely in our state. Now the governor, again, recommends, while he said that they are working and discussing this idea of a vaccine passport in North Carolina, he believes that it is, quote, something the state should do. All in the while, states like Florida and Texas, of course, have taken action to ban such a passport. If you look at how the system is getting rolled out in places like New York, it's been a disaster, as it typically is when government gets involved in things up in the Northeast or out on the left coast. Yeah, I said the left coast. La La Land out there in California, the state of Oregon, and the state of Washington that make up the West. States like Florida, Texas have taken action to ban such a passport. Governor Cooper discussing this, working on it, and believes that it's something the state should do. The vaccine passport in North Carolina. Caller, you're with us at 910-299-7535. Good morning.
Yes, Joe. My name's Chris. I run a local fish house here in the Wilmington area, and just talking back with the, all the employees getting these, being laid off with their benefits and not wanting to go into work. It's amazing how many of these restaurants are having to work as hard as they are to try to please the people that are coming through. And it's really just, they're doing everything they can, but I really do feel that people are going to have to wake up and go back to work and realize that this stuff is going to have to charge through. It's definitely, there's a lot of restaurants in this town, though, that need help and need people to, get back to work. It's just Easter week, and this vacation has opened a lot of these places' eyes, and I feel like they need to really focus on going back to work and, maybe helping the community out again, because, there's a lot of people just not working.
Well, there's no question. That's across the board and all over the country, this situation that we're seeing right now. Hey, as we move up into the top of the hour, what are some of the concerns, not only finding help, but finding help that actually shows up when they say they're going to and on their schedule? I hear this all the time, in that, young people in particular, and I get it, in some instances, not the most reliable demographic of people out there, but it seems to be a trend that we're seeing throughout much of the country, in that these young people, whether it be their parents are paying for everything, or they've got daddy's credit card, or they just don't need to get to work. It seems strange to me that in those early work years, to gain all this type of experience, whether it be work or life experience, that there are a lot of kids out there, particularly in the late teens and early 20s, that just would rather, I guess, stay home than earn an income or learn the tricks of the trade. And do you find that in your business at this point? Oh, he must have hung up. Well, I apologize. And with that said, we'll go to the top of the hour, because that's what I'm hearing across the country, and that a number of businesses are struggling these days because they can't find the help, the help needed to keep their operation up and running at a pace that makes it very fruitful to remain in the industry. And given all that we've been through over the past year, it's just very disappointing to see people not getting back involved in the economy and in the workforce to help support these businesses and, of course, to earn your income. But I guess when you're told that you're non-essential, you can stay home and still collect a check with some added income to it, why would you want to return to that normalcy when you're getting used to the good life back at home? Thanks to Uncle Sam. We've hit the top of the hour. Our friend Chad Adams joins us next.
Keeping Charlotte informed. The Big Talker 106.7 FM WFBT, Carolina Beach.
Palace says Prince Philip passed away peacefully this morning at Windsor Castle. He was 99 years old. The CDC reviewing reports of adverse reactions to the Johnson & Johnson COVID vaccine in North Carolina and Iowa, Colorado, and Georgia.
North Carolina health officials say they have stopped administering Johnson & Johnson doses at a mass vaccination site in Raleigh and clinics in Hillsborough and Chapel Hill. At least 26 people experienced adverse reactions, including fainting. The CDC says fainting is not uncommon. The agency has not found any reasons for concern and is not telling health departments to stop vaccinations. Johnson & Johnson is assessing what has happened, saying its top priority is the safety and well-being of the people it serves. I'm Mike Hempen.
Watching Wall Street this morning, stock futures are mixed. Right now, the Dow futures up 85 points. NASDAQ futures 24 points lower. S&P futures 6 points higher. More on these stories at townhall.com.
Tell me why Relief Factor is so successful in lowering or eliminating pain. I'm often asked that question. Pete and Seth Talbot, the father and son founders of Relief Factor, tell me they believe our bodies were designed to heal. The doctors who formulated Relief Factor selected the 4 best ingredients, 100% drug-free ingredients that each help your body deal with inflammation. Order the 3-week quick start now. Discount it to only $19.95 to see if it will work for you too. Call 800 500-8384. ReliefFactor.com.
As a follower of Christ, you are created and called for greatness, now more than ever before. In his powerful sequel to the bestseller Kingdom Man, Tony Evans' Kingdom Men Rising calls men to break free of apathetic faith, to take a stand, do more than just exist. You have been called to rise up and influence those around you. Discover how when you get Kingdom Men Rising and learn the art of intentional impact.
New from Tony Evans, sponsored by the Urban Alternative.
Belfast saw another night of violence, rioters clashing with police.
Demonstrators, many of them young men, throw stones and fireworks at police, who respond by deploying a water cannon. Authorities in Northern Ireland have been trying to restore calm. The last 2 nights have been the worst mayhem in a week of riots in Belfast. Britain's split from the EU has highlighted the contested status of Northern Ireland, where some people identify as British and want to stay in the UK, while others see themselves as Irish and seek unity with the neighbouring Republic of Ireland, an EU member. I'm Charles de Ledesma.
Japan planning to raise a coronavirus alert level in Tokyo to allow tougher measures to curb a rapid spread of a more contagious variant ahead of the Summer Olympic Games in Tokyo. Breaking news and analysis at townhall.com. An active volcano forcing evacuations in the eastern Caribbean.
Authorities on the island of St. Vincent believe the mount is in danger of erupting and switched the alert level to red as officials prepare to evacuate people who live near La Soufriere volcano and place them aboard cruise ships, send them to nearby islands, or take them to shelters elsewhere in St. Vincent that are outside the danger zone. Roughly 16,000 people live in the red zone and will need to be evacuated amid concerns the pandemic could hamper those efforts. Rhonda Rockstra reporting.
Critics are blasting President Biden's latest series of executive orders as a gun grab. Texas Governor Greg Abbott accusing Mr. Biden of threatening our Second Amendment rights. Recapping the hour's lead story, Buckingham Palace officials say that Prince Philip, the husband of Queen Elizabeth II, has died. Prince Philip was 99 years old. More on these stories at townhall.com.
Let me tell you something you already know. The world ain't all sunshine and rainbows. It's a very mean and nasty place, and I don't care how tough you are, it will beat you to your knees and keep you there permanently if you let it. You, me, or nobody is gonna hit as hard as life. But it ain't about how hard you hit. It's about how hard you can get hit and keep moving forward. How much you can take and keep moving forward. That's how winning is done.
When the moon hits your eye like a big pizza pie, that's amore. When the world seems to shine like you've had too much wine, that's amore.
7 minutes past the top of the hour, and you're tuned in to the Big Talker, 106.7 FM. We're broadcasting back home to the Carolina coast from the Lone Star State in Arlington, Texas today as we continue our travels this spring with the Coastal Carolina University baseball team. Our friend Chad Adams joins us just after 8 o'clock every Friday morning, fresh off his appearance on the program yesterday, an extended appearance, serving as our fill-in guest host once again. And Chad, as you've kind of become more accustomed to sitting back into the chair and serving as a host of a 3-hour radio program, are you picking things back up the way you used to many, many moons ago when you did this on a regular basis?
Oh, I have no idea, Joe. It's the diary of a madman. You're sitting in a room talking to yourself and hoping people are listening. So the listeners will have to be the judge of my abilities with regards to sitting in that chair. But it was nice to be in the studio and talk to your audience.
Well, once again, it was good to have you, and thank you so much for willing to do this so we can continue to do some of these other things and get opportunities to meet, talk, and see people from all over the country. And I think this is a unique time in our ability to do this because it just so happens that I've been to a number of states over the last couple of weeks that have been wide open. And for the most part, even my leftist uncle made mention of this when I visited Florida. He said, want to know why in Florida, we're not overly concerned with the COVID situation? Well, because no one's talking about it. It's not the first thing that we conversate about when we get together with one another. This is from my leftist uncle telling me this in the state of Florida back in Christmas time. And I think there's something to that in that, there's a virus out there. People are assessing their own risk at this point. And in some states, when given the freedom, they're operating more freely. And it's not, the biggest concern to them.
Yeah, the obsession. We're starting to realize the obsession some people have with this kind of. It's a fixation that some people have on it that's taken over their lives, and they've forgotten about the grandeur of life. And your uncle in Florida realizes there's much more to life than this. And I was reading yesterday. In fact, I'd read it somewhat to the audience. That this is the first virus in anyone's lifetime, first one in U.S. history, that we track by the number of people that test positive for it. Heretofore, a case of a given disease, whether it's influenza or polio or whatever it was, a case meant somebody that needed medical assistance. Only with this disease is it, even if a teenager gets it and has no symptoms whatsoever but a positive test, because they're making every teenager get a test, then that's a case, which makes the caseload look much larger. And rather than just tracking cases as a result in medical treatment. So we're going to learn a lot from what's happened over the past year, a lot of things we should never do again, and some things we should probably do better. But the obsession is because it's day in, day out. And Georgia released everybody yesterday. It's no more mandates, no more anything. It's an absolutely free, normal state. And you're in Texas, which is moving in that direction, if not already there. But North Carolina, our governor, still won't tell us what conditions need to exist for him to do that.
Yeah. Well, and of course, a lot of what has been said with the governor, the only reason, in my estimation, why he's actually even moved to loosen some of these regulations is because he was either losing the battle, meaning within the legislature and that state lawmakers were going to force his hand, say, in opening the schools, for instance, which, most of our public schools will be back to full-time in-person instruction after their spring break here over the next couple of days, or litigation, meaning lawsuits being filed against the state challenging some of these executive actions. Only when litigation and legislation has moved, against what he's been trying to do, has he then, made announcements that were going to happen anyway, like the reopening of schools and whatnot. Chad, let me ask you also, we had a caller just a moment ago, and I'm noticing this in my travels everywhere, and even right back at home, is the fact that there are help wanted signs on every storefront window, and particularly within the hospitality industry. Why are there people still, is it more of a fear thing, or is it a fact that there's no incentive, that they're earning the same amount of income they would be through a government unemployment check, and maybe it's a mixture of a little bit of both?
Sometimes it's more to not work. It's more to do nothing, and that's stores are begging, and there's help wanted applying side immediately everywhere. Everywhere I've traveled, I was in the center part of the state yesterday, needing help up there. They're needing help down here at the coast. Obviously, the tourist season's already underway. If you're anywhere in Brunswick County near a beach, that traffic is a lot heavier than it normally would be this time of year. So there are a lot of people, I guess, that are still working from home that can go and spend a week at the beach. Rentals are up, but they need help. The restaurants are understaffed. Most of Lowe's, even Lowe's and Home Depot, those places, desperately understaffed. And we have provided incentives by paying people enough that they don't want to work. It's much more lucrative to not work right now. We should never incentivize not working, which is what we've done. And at some point, that's got to change.
Chad, at the state level, and last week when you joined us, we took a bit of a shot at our state senator, Michael Lee, Republican from New Hanover County, for his efforts to want to bolster the film grant program. So every good mentor and coach, what they do is they knock you down and then they build you back up. So that's what we'll do here this week with Senator Lee, as he has come out as a primary sponsor of a bill that would expand the state's popular Opportunity Scholarship program, which, of course, as you know, provides funding for low-income or special special needs students to attend private schools across the state. This whole debate on school choice. Governor Cooper wants to eliminate the Opportunity Scholarship Program. Why is it the same folks that call so much attention to education are the same folks who are standing in the way of allowing families to get some of their money back and invest it into the school of their choice, similarly like they can do with this Opportunity Scholarship initiative?
It's bizarre to me, Joe, that if the goal is to educate a child, which should be, whether you're a Democrat or Republican, the goal is you want the best possible educational opportunities and the best possible educational outcomes for people regardless of their income, regardless of the geography in which they find themselves. So opportunity scholarships are one of those options for folks who are maybe in a bad system, but it makes and don't have many options. Maybe they don't have charter schools in that region. They can go and find a Christian school or private school and offset some of the cost of that school, get a lower cost, and have it helped with, because the dollars are going to follow the kid. And the more that dollars follow the kid, which many states are doing, many states are letting the dollars follow the kid. They're almost creating an entire state full of opportunity scholarship, and the public school system has to earn those kids. But Democrats in general, I don't even want to say in general, because many inner city Black Democrats want school choice and opportunity scholarships. It's only the elites like Governor Cooper and the Association of Educators that are so threatened by choices. They're terrified that someone's going to find out that it can be done better in other places, which would force a revolution within the public school system. I don't know why they're afraid of that. They should embrace it, because we all want the same outcome. And if it helps the kid and it doesn't, that money's going to go to the kid anyway. I don't know why Governor Cooper would be against it, and he's not. He's tried to race bait and some other things, but it just hasn't worked, and those opportunity scholarships are here to stay.
Well, with that said, of course, the governor, under his budget proposal that he laid out, would eliminate the Opportunity Scholarship Program. Yep. And then, under the Republican legislature with Senator Michael Lee pushing this initiative, they want to expand it. So an obvious divide there when it comes to school choice. And he said an issue that attracts a lot of folks, particularly from the urbanized areas and those with D's next to their name. Chad, why is it that the white liberal seems to be the one standing in the way of any type of what we would call progress in our country?
I think it exposes the inherent racial bias that white liberals have. They're very elite. They very much think that people aren't as smart as they are, and that's why they preach these kind of things. They don't believe that blacks are smart enough to get an ID. So you'll see the white liberal Democrat elite say, any kind of voter ID is racist, and that's not really the case. What it really is they don't believe a certain group of people are smart enough to get an ID in 2021, and that there's not enough infrastructure for people to get an ID, which is also false. So that's the problem, is the elites think they know what's best for you, and if you'll do what they tell you to, it's a very totalitarian way of looking at things. Just you be the peon, you do what they tell you to. It's not the party anymore of the working man. It's not the party of the entrepreneur. It's not the party of the people trying to get ahead in life. It's a party that's become very stuck in the past, very much a dictatorial, tyrannical. I mean, look at the governor. All these mandates, those are not, he didn't seek counsel with anyone else. He just decided by himself, not even including the Council of State, the other statewide elected officials. And he's getting pushback on that, and that's all he really has. If you were to say, what has Governor Cooper accomplished outside of mandates to lock down the economy, he doesn't really have any accomplishments. This is his one big thing. Well, and he negotiated the deal on the transgender bathroom issue when he first got in office, but that's expired now. So he has no real long-term consequences. It's just COVID Cooper. That's the two things. That's what's going to be linked to him forever.
And I think a lot of people out there are still kind of baffled at the fact that in the 2020 election, President Trump was able to carry the state. Senator Tom Tillis, had more votes than any of these, federally elected officials up there within the state. And the Republicans still held ground on the congressional races, and Republicans fared well across the board, with the exception of this gubernatorial race. Given the fact that there were so many people out there, criticizing the governor for his lack of movement on some of the executive orders that have remained in place throughout much of North Carolina. Chad, on the education front as well, there's a myth out there that we of course are not funding the public education system enough, and that is a myth because all of the numbers in North Carolina and across much of the country, disprove that narrative out there that we're not funding education properly, and that in large part is due to the massive growth of the administrative state within the public school system over the past 10, 15 years. Somehow, some way, that money isn't finding its way into the classroom. Yeah, 40 years. Somehow, some way, it's not finding its way into the classroom. Now, how do we ever, or is it too far gone, which is why we need to just continue to push school choice?
Just the opposite. I think that what you said is true. For the past 40 years, if you look at the amount of money, and there are many on the left that want to say, look, that there's less money going to education. That's not true. If you adjust it for inflation and population growth, again, it's grown faster than that. If you look at through the pandemic, it's grown almost exponentially faster. There are billions of dollars, millions and millions, hundreds of millions of dollars in North Carolina that remains unspent because the schools have been closed and yet money's been pouring into it like a cement truck in a parking lot. It's just pouring money in, and the accountability for these sticky situations in which that money has to be spent in very specific ways. But the money doesn't make the kid learn faster. The money doesn't make the kid learn better. And we're not looking at outcomes. We're looking at the front end. And there are tons of charter schools, and there are tons of public schools, by the way, that are doing a stellar job of teaching people, and they're doing it for less money. And that's one of the things we need to focus on. A lot of these charter schools, like Charter Day School, that are doing stellar work, are doing it for a lot less money than the public schools get, because charter schools don't even get money for buildings. They don't get any capital money. They have to do it just with student recurring money. So we're doing better. We know what works with kids. And there's a new bill, by the way, that the legislature passed that I believe Governor Cooper either has signed or will let lie and become a signed, that will make basically all K through 3 in the state learn to read via direct instruction, which we've known for 50 years is the best way to teach people to read. And Democrats got on board because they didn't think of it that way. It came from Mississippi that it's working, and the reality is the teachers have been trained how to teach direct instruction reading, and they're learning to read, and there's no more money to do it. You just train the teachers in the summer, and they're ready to go in the fall, and kids can learn how to read. It's not rocket science. It's actually proven science.
Well, and of course, we all know what the research shows us, that if kids are falling behind, particularly in reading prior to entering the 4th grade, meaning through their elementary school years, that they're going to have a tough row ahead when it comes to just being proficient and being able to absorb and obtain the knowledge and information needed to move through their education in a successful way. This, of course, is a topic that is always that becomes very controversial, I guess, because Democrats and the media do a good job of teaming up on Republicans anytime they look outside the box for a way to make movement on an issue that's been plaguing our school system for years. Another effort here in the North Carolina General Assembly, Chad, is to once again lower the state's income tax rate. How about that? They want to take it under 5% for the next tax filing period. Why is it that we can continue to decrease income taxes and tax burden overall on North Carolinians, but still not have the fiscal disaster that had been predicted by Governor Cooper and a lot of his henchmen over the course of the last number of years?
Well, you kind of glossed over it, but let me remind the audience of one thing that's absolutely true. Every time the Republicans cut taxes, the Democrats, including Roy Cooper, Progress NC, Blue NC, all of the left-leaning groups, Steve Smith Reynolds, all of them and all the legislators said it was going to lead to deficits as far hundreds of millions of dollars in deficits. We have a constitutional amendment which requires the budget be balanced. But not only did we balance the budget, we ended up with surplus revenue. Not only did we end up with surplus revenue every time taxes were cut, we were able to reestablish the rainy day fund with billions of dollars in it, which made the hurricane relief possible that Governor Cooper was terrible at administering. So when you look at those facts, and the reason is the economy grew. If you take money and let entrepreneurs spend it and grow their businesses, guess what? They hire more people, they purchase more products, they sell more things, and people can afford those things. Florida doesn't even have a state income tax. North Carolina needs to get rid of its corporate tax, which is the lowest of states that have a corporate income tax, and its personal income tax is coming down. So eventually we may see this go away. We might see the state income tax almost drop to nothing and see the corporate tax go away completely. But the governor Cooper, the king, will not sign any tax relief whatsoever. I don't see that happening, so it's going to take a number of Democrats to come on board to say this will help everyone. but we'll see what happens.
Well, in fact, Governor Cooper, through his budget proposal, wants to put up a massive bond up for vote that would spend a ton of money. And,
yes,
of course, taking out loans to do that and pay for that, along with increasing spending across the board. We've seen this before here in the state of North Carolina, Chad, and that was prior to Republicans taking over the legislature in 2010. How did that end up working out for North Carolinians and our state when the economic disaster hit and the Great Recession came over us back in 2008, 2009.
Right. Well, don't forget we had the NC Connect bond when McCrory was in office. And even with the tax cuts, that bond was and has been fully funded. But now, Cooper, this is the greatest spending expansion we've seen almost in our lifetime. The amount of money he wants to spend on quote-unquote infrastructure, following in Joe Biden's lead, who also wants a massive infrastructure build. So this is that Keynesian argument that we can just spend money, and by spending taxpayer money that we receive, we can stimulate the economy. It didn't work then. It doesn't work now. We should be looking at ways to privatize a lot of what we're building and wanting to accomplish. And we can. You can even go to the private sector and do things with roads that you can make toll roads. I know some people hate those, but that gets paid by the people who use them. So there's a number of different things we can do that this governor is just reluctant to do, and he wants to spend money because what it looks like to the taxpayers that are unaware is that it's free money. Oh, wow, it's a bond. It's a $4 billion bond. It's free. The government's got the money. No, they don't. The only money they have is the money that you earn and then pay them. But this governor's been tone deaf on economic issues since day one. And he was as an attorney general. He was as a legislator.
Chad, before I let you go, State Treasurer Dale Folwell has been in the news, and we really enjoy our conversations with the Treasurer twice a month on the Big Talker on Wednesdays. He's criticizing hospitals across the state, alleging that they're not complying with the new federal price transparency rule. This is something that was put in place by President Trump and was set and took effect with the first of the new year. So this mandate and rule requires each hospital to provide accessible pricing information about the items and services they provide. Treasurer Folwell is claiming that thousands of hospitals across the country are undermining this rule. They're blocking access to price information by using special coding and a big technology type of thing that hampers your ability to find out what it costs when you want to get a procedure or a service from your local hospital. Why are these hospitals so hesitant to provide transparency when it comes to what things cost when you go to get a procedure done?
That's a huge question, and one that we could spend an entire show doing, and one that I love talking about. Hospitals in general have local monopolies. They don't necessarily have multiple hospitals in the same market that compete. There's number one, you don't have competition, so the hospitals act, as Dale Folwell said, like a cartel. They can talk to each other and say, hey, here's what we're going to do. You got your region, I've got my region, just like Sinaloa and the Pablo Escobar and the Cali cartel. Secondly, because of that, they keep the codes. They work with the insurance companies and Medicaid, Medicare. They have the codes that are very difficult to sift through. My wife had a horrible medical emergency a few years ago, and sifting through that billing and the way it was done, and she was with the state at the time, you could not understand that. There were probably hundreds of pages of different coding and billing that you could not have read. It was basically written in Sanskrit. It's intentionally confusing that way so that the patient can't know. I work in medical travel. One of my other endeavors is working working with self-insured companies that send patients to top-of-the-line, internationally recognized hospitals to get knee replacements, hip replacements, and stuff done. We do it fully transparent. Not only are we fully transparent, we're about $50,000 to $80,000 to $100,000 cheaper per procedure, even when taking into account travel and with a companion and follow-up visits. And not only that, they don't pay a deductible. They get money when they come back because the difference in prices are so profound that American workers that are getting operated on are getting ripped off. Their companies are getting ripped off. These procedures shouldn't be as much as they are, and it's deliberately confusing. And Dale Folwell is 100% right, and that's why the company I work with has been doing this for 15 years, dealing with some of the largest workforce groups in the nation. And it's amazing when self-insured companies get tired of getting ripped off and they want to have options for their employees. They come to companies like mine and say, wow, we can save, for every 1,200 employees, we're saving about $800,000 a year. And that's just money that's back into the workforce, that's back into investment in infrastructure and stuff. So the hospitals are not being, if we ever were transparent, medical prices and cost, if we knew what we were paying for, would be profoundly cheaper, probably 50% or more cheaper.
Chad, why is it that Treasurer Falwell is basically the only lawmaker on either side of the political spectrum to point this kind of stuff out? Literally, he's like the lone wolf in this effort to try and bring transparency to the system.
Because just as in Colombia, when people were pointing out the narco traffickers, there was a lot of money being pushed around in the Colombian legislature to say, hey, let's not rock the boat. And that's what happens here. There's a lot of money. These hospitals have billions of dollars in offshore accounts. And you think I'm lying. I'm not. They have billions of dollars in offshore accounts. So these hospitals have a ton of money to preserve and protect the system the way it was. Dr. Greg Murphy, one of the good guy in Congress, we interviewed him. I interviewed him on your show. Nice guy. On this issue, though, the hospitals put a lot of pressure on legislators. They want to keep the system the way it is. They love gaming the system the way it is. They love being a protected class. They don't want change. And so they push the legislature, who they want money. Both sides, Democrats and Republicans, help protect the status quo cartel. And it needs to be broken. And Dale Falwell is 100% correct. He's one of the few people that has the courage to take on this, because he knows that every time he does, the state of North Carolina's employees that's a self-insured group out there, a self-insured group, tens of thousands of employees across the state and ex-employees, retirees that are not getting transparent billing, that were they able to see these transparent bills, then we could bring down the cost significantly in this state. And if other states could do it, then the nation and the companies like mine that are doing it for pennies on the dollar in other countries with American-trained physicians, it would be a much closer competition. There are even hospitals in this country that we send patients to that are doing it cheaper, that are top-of-the-line hospitals. It's just a ripoff.
Well, and of course, one of the big efforts in the social engineering or re-engineering of our culture, if you look at some of the tactics used by those in opposition to any transparency, healthcare was one of the driving forces to get people reliant on the government for more of their health care. And that's one of the big ways in which they've tried to reimagine what our country looks like. And it starts with this healthcare monopoly and, as you said, this cartel that is preventing us from gaining access to open information as far as the way we consume.
Right. And Joe, they've convinced us that health insurance is health care, and it's not. And people want to diffuse the argument and try to say, it's about rights and privileges and stuff like that. That takes away from the argument. What we have is a fiscal problem with the way that hospitals operate and the way in which they are not transparent with their billing. Imagine going to the grocery store where there were no prices on any of the food. And when you bought your food and you checked out the counter, you didn't see the prices because you had food insurance. And then the food insurance company would determine what they reimbursed you for, and you would, get a bill for your food that actually wasn't for the food, but it was back to the insurance company because you've been paying premiums for your food insurance, and you never knew what the food cost. That would be an absurd system, but that's what we have in healthcare. It's absurd. And there's not enough organization against it.
Well, and like you said, when there's money involved and when big business and big government are cozying up to one another, that, of course, results in a loss for the American people. I mean, it's just that simple.
It is. And we have trouble. Well, there's a lot we have trouble with our own mortality and stuff. And whenever something goes wrong, they always, instead of dealing with the patient, it's looking for someone to blame. But you're in a great state down there in Texas and places like MD Anderson and Houston, one of the best cancer treatment facilities in the world. And fact, even that's not transparent billing.
Well, in fact, our baseball coach here in Coastal going through cancer treatment right now and has been down to Houston multiple times to be treated because of its forward movement in battling against this deadly disease, a disease that apparently wasn't there wasn't much of it last year. Apparently, everything under the guise of COVID. Chad, thanks a lot for the time, bud.
Thank you. Have a great weekend, Joe.
And you do as well. As we hit the bottom of the hour, plus a couple of minutes, we'll get a news break, some spots that will play before we bring in Paul Vallone to highlight yesterday's announcement by the Biden administration surrounding executive orders on firearms in our country. And when we speak of Texas, Governor Abbott here in the Lone Star State took to social media yesterday, and he did in fact claim that Joe Biden was threatening our Second Amendment rights. After announcing this power grab, he says that he will not allow this in the state of Texas, and has called on their lawmakers in the Lone Star State to get legislation making Texas a Second Amendment sanctuary state. They want it passed and on his desk for him to sign in the immediate future. We'll talk with Paul Vallone. He's of Grassroots, North Carolina, host of the weekend talk show on the Big Talker FM known as Guns, Politics, and Freedom. It airs at 1 p.m. on Saturdays here on the Big Talker. Paul runs the organization, again, known as Grassroots, and they are dedicated to educating the public about your Second Amendment rights and work to preserve these rights, whether that be at the state legislature in Raleigh or up in Washington, D.C. We'll hear from Paul after the break.
Hello, I'm Jeff Rivenbark with WWAY News. Authorities say a man opened fire yesterday afternoon at a Texas cabinet-making company where he worked, killing one person and wounding 5 others. A police statement says 27-year-old Larry Winston Boland of Iola, Texas, has been charged with murder and being held on a $1 million bond. Authorities say Boland shot and wounded a state trooper before he was arrested. 2 of the 5 people wounded at the cabinet business are in critical condition. The 3 others and the trooper are in serious but stable condition. Police say Boland worked at the company. The town of Charlotte has turned an abandoned building into a vaccination site. During Hurricane Florence, parts of Coastal Cinema's roof were torn off. It's now shut down with a parking lot being leased for COVID-19 vaccinations. The National Guard and Brunswick County vaccinate about 500 people each day. Emergency Management Director Edward Conrose says it's an ideal location with a large parking lot that can serve many people at once. Another big festival in the area canceled again because of the pandemic. The Blueberry Festival in Burgaw will not happen this year. Town leaders say they made the decision to cancel in an effort to protect vendors, volunteers, and visitors. The event typically attracts 40,000 people, and the current state mandate prohibits gatherings of that size. However, local blueberry farmers will be allowed to sell their blueberries at the Burgaw Courthouse Square on Saturday, June 19th. And weather forecasters are predicting an above-normal hurricane season this year. Colorado State University is calling for 17 named storms, 8 hurricanes, and 4 major hurricanes. The seasonal average is 12 named storms, 6 hurricanes, and 3 major hurricanes. Current warm sea surface temperatures in the subtropic Atlantic is driving the above-average probability. For more on these stories, head over to WWAYTV3.com. I'm Jeff Rivenbark. Have a great day.
Happy Friday, everybody. I'm WWAY meteorologist Ramel Carpenter with your Storm Track 3 forecast. We're going to see another day with warm temperatures getting back into the upper 70s and low 80s across those inland communities. Highs along the immediate coastline will top off in the middle 70s. And we're going to see a mixture of sunshine and clouds throughout the afternoon hours today with a chance for some hit or miss showers and even isolated thunderstorms possible as we get into the second half of the day. But again, most places are going to stay dry, and late tonight our temperatures drop back down into the upper 50s and the low 60s. Get your full forecast on WWAY and WWAYTV3.com.
This news and weather is brought to you by 2 Men and a Truck. For your free quote, go to 2menandatruck.com. 2menandatruck.com. Do you or someone you love suffer from back pain, poor circulation, or struggle to get a good night's sleep? Do you just need help getting into or out of your chair? US Med Express is Wilmington's leading supplier of golden technology lift and sleep chairs, carrying a variety of models in our showroom at 1733 Dawson Street. Our chairs lead the industry in power lift recliner features and advances in technology. Our chairs are FDA certified as medical devices, which means it's 100% tax deductible and helps with a number of medical conditions, including arthritis, poor circulation, and sleep apnea. Give us a call today at 910-500-6162 or stop by and experience our chairs for yourself at 1733 Dawson Street. That's 910-500-6162. 1733 Dawson Street in Wilmington. US Med Express.
My name's John Hennett, commercial real estate broker and vice president of Eastern Carolina's commercial real estate here in Wilmington. I also have a side hustle as a residential real estate appraiser. So if you have any interest in buying or selling, investing in real estate, or you're just curious, give me a call at 910-619-3430. But the main reason I'm here to talk to you today is I have a tremendous amount of community pride in Wilmington, and particularly our small businesses. Small businesses collectively make up the largest single employer in our community, and it is important that we support them. Like Our Crepes and More, a great crepe restaurant located at 3810 Oleander Drive, behind the Whole Foods or across the street from the car wash, if you will. Benjamin, who's the owner, is one of the nicest people you'll meet in our community, and their crepes are absolutely delicious. I meet there weekly with my Bible study group and find that I've never had anything on the menu that I didn't like. So remember, support our small businesses like Our Crepes and More, and give me a call, 910-619-3430, if I can help with any real estate related matters.
All right, as we move into the second half of our program here on the Big Talker FM, great to have you with us at BigTalkerFM.com, broadcasting once again back to the coast from Arlington, Texas this morning, and we'll be back at it again on Monday as we continue our travels with the Coastal Carolina University baseball team. Paul Vallone is the host of Guns, Politics, and Freedom, and you hear his program on the weekends over the Big Talker FM. He's the founder of Grassroots North Carolina, which is an organization dedicated to the protection of your constitutional rights. That was front and center yesterday in regards to the Second Amendment, Paul, and this latest push in many people's minds by the government to chip away at our rights under the Constitution. Grandpa Joe, as we call him, President Biden, says that this is not an action that would step in the way of our Second Amendment. What say you, based on what you heard yesterday from our Commander-in-Chief?
Well, thanks, Joe, for having me, and what I say is nonsense. Of course, I think everybody has read this as the first in a series of steps by this administration to end or severely curtail the private ownership of firearms. As usual with gun control advocates, they start with the low-hanging fruit, the things that they think they can vilify to other gun owners, which in this case are what they call concealable assault weapons, although assault weapons don't really exist. That is a fabrication of the gun control movement back in the 1980s, and there's nothing especially concealable about these firearms, but that is, of course, what they use to play divide and conquer with the gun community, so that your average hunter who might own a bolt-action rifle or a shotgun, they say, oh, well, they're just going after those concealable assault weapons, and consequently, they don't tend to get involved. I can assure every gun owner, everyone who supports the Second Amendment, that the Biden administration is indeed after your guns. That is the ultimate intent of what they're doing.
Paul, when we look at some of these executive actions that he laid out for us, my thought would be, if there's so much for support for this, up in Washington, D.C., why not put these measures forward in Congress and have the legislature, take action on this rather than push it through, executive action? Is the reason why he's doing this because, in fact, he does not have the support in Washington, D.C., or at least a majority in Congress to get this done?
That is precisely right. He does not have the necessary 60 votes for cloture on legislation for this because, of course, the Senate requires a supermajority unless at some point they decide to end the filibuster and make sure that they have complete one-party rule and a perfect fiefdom. But at this point in time, no, he doesn't have the votes for that, and that's exactly why he's doing what he is doing by executive action. And everybody will go, well, I mean, the Supreme Court will stop him. They might. But the reality is that these, I won't say laws, these executive fiats will be considered constitutional and enforced until one organization and one individual proves that they are not constitutional. So the reality is that we'll end up living with these things for at least some period of time.
Well, with that said, you already know that there are probably organizations such as yours, and among many others across the country, that are starting to lick their lips and get ready to move forward with litigation and lawsuits that would challenge this immediately. With that said, he did mention yesterday gun violence is a public health crisis, and I don't think anyone would disagree with the fact that the numbers out there are what they are. We have seen, a rise in violence and crime. In your mind, what leads us to that point where, we have seen, we see shootings every day in many urbanized areas, and we highlight those types of things. When we talk about the rise of violence in our country, you and I would both agree that it's not necessarily the machine that is responsible. It's the person behind the machine carrying out some of these heinous acts. The numbers, of course, show you, as far as ultimately, particularly within with a rifle, the numbers again are very small in comparison to total numbers when we talk about murder and violence in our country. But what in your mind is responsible, or what should we be talking about when we see a rise in violence in our country, rather than just pointing at the gun and saying we have to limit those rights?
This is perhaps the Biden administration's greatest Reichstag moment, because the reality is that for decades, violent crime in the United States has been dropping. It has risen lately because essentially of the defund movement and the fact that that all of these leftists want to defund police. They're not doing anything about the rioters of BLM, and they're not doing anything to prosecute the violent criminals. And so in these urban areas, because they have defunded police, because they have hamstrung their police departments, violent crime is exploding. So what we are being told is we've got this epidemic of gun violence, and we're being told this precisely by the people who are causing the epidemic of violence. This is kind of like when Eric Holder, back in Fast and Furious during the Obama administration, claimed that that we needed to stop not to ban so-called assault weapons because they were being smuggled into Mexico and used by cartels, while in fact the federal government was smuggling them into Mexico for use by cartels. This is exactly the type of thing that the Biden administration has specialized in.
Well, you talk about defunding the police and kind of, putting law enforcement in a rock and a hard place where they don't want to go out and enforce the law in fear that they may lose their jobs or be the next poster child for a riot or some sort of, criminal behavior that was, by and large, allowed to go on for the better part of last year throughout the summer months. How about bail reform? There's another one, letting criminals back out on the street, charged with, in many cases, felonies and other types of serious crimes, and allowing these people back out of the streets and believing that they're not just going to go out and commit similar acts. I mean, doesn't this incentivize the criminal?
Of course it does. I mean, but of course, I would argue that an explosion of violent crime is precisely what this administration is looking for, because the reality is that they can only increase governmental control over your life, if there is chaos. And so anything that they can do, either deliberately or as a byproduct of their policies, to increase that chaos can only increase their chances of governmental control over your life. And I would argue that that is precisely the point.
Paul Vallone with us, host of Guns, Politics, and Freedom, also founder of the organization known as Grassroots North Carolina. Paul, when we talk about your effort at GRNC and through your radio program on the Big Talker, these are issues that you tackle on a day-to-day basis and highlight many of these trends and efforts by government, particularly within the left of the Democrat political spectrum, to hone in on the Second Amendment and your rights. The Biden administration and President Biden said yesterday that no amendment to the Constitution is absolute. And in some cases, you can look at it and say, all right, well, yeah, in fact, you can change and amend the Constitution, but it takes a 2/3 majority vote in the House and the Senate to do that, not by executive action. That's a scary thing when you've got the commander-in-chief who looks at something like that and makes a comment like that yesterday.
Well, let me put it this way. That's not a new argument. Gun control advocates have been saying this for decades. The typical presentation is, no right is absolute. I can't yell fire in a crowded theater, after all. But the reality is that if we were, apparently these people don't know the principle of prior constraint, because if we were to use the gun control model on free speech, I would be bound and gagged before I entered the theater on the premise that I might yell fire. That's how gun control works.
Well, when you look at legal firearm owners, I mean, the numbers say it all and everything you need to know when we talk about just how law-abiding firearm owners are. What is it, like 98% of firearm owners will never commit a crime involving a firearm. And there's also this myth, I guess, as the president laid out yesterday, that apparently if you go to a gun show, you don't get a background check before you make purchases at that gun show. Correct. And
that's nonsense.
I've spoken with the sheriff locally in our county. I've spoken with those who train certified firearm instructors, and they've at length given us just how thorough many of these background checks are. Why is it that a universal background check needs to be included? In many states, they're already pretty strict, and it's the local people that are responsible for this, not the federal government.
Well, first of all, there is no so-called gun show loophole. They try and claim that, you can buy a gun at a gun show without a background check. I'm sorry, but the reality is that the same laws that apply everywhere else apply at gun shows. Particularly within the state of North Carolina, the transfer of any handgun requires either a pistol purchase permit or a North Carolina concealed handgun permit, both of which require a background check. What they're really looking at when they call for these so-called universal background checks is they want to make sure that they capture all transfers of firearms, including private transfers, inheritances, gifts, sales, in the computerized background check system, so that when they can turn it into a proper gun registration system, which of course is their objective, when they can do that, they know where to find guns as they are able to ban them. That is the objective of this administration.
The Biden administration also put forth an idea yesterday as they want the DOJ to propose within the next 2 months a rule on pistol braces that are used for handguns. They claim that these braces make guns and make your spot more accurate. What makes actual accuracy? What's the reality of that when we talk about firearm accuracy by the person behind the weapon?
The whole concept of that should scare every rifle owner, because if we want to make guns inaccurate, if we're going to ban firearms by how accurate they are, bench rest shooters should beware, because those firearms are capable of putting shots into very, very small groups at relatively long distances. The idea that, that makes it more accurate, so what? Accuracy is the intent of making a firearm. Once again, it's a game of divide and conquer. They're just looking for reasons that they can vilify a firearm or a class of firearms in order to play divide and conquer among gun owners. I don't care what type of firearm you own. I don't care if you don't own a firearm. The reality is that there is nothing functionally different from these firearms, from hunting guns, from any other type of firearms. They're dividing them only to play divide and conquer among gun owners.
When we look at eliminating gun manufacturers from immunity that they receive from Congress, I mean, are we going to start, filing lawsuits against automobile companies when people get in their car and get into traffic accidents and kill people because it's the car's fault? Ultimately, isn't this what they're saying? If we're going to do a compare and contrast analysis here.
Well, back in, I believe it was 2011, Congress passed the Protection of Lawful Commerce in Arms Act, precisely because we had a bunch of ideologically motivated cities that were trying to sue gun manufacturers out of business using what they claimed were novel legal theories. We actually had a spate of these lawsuits in the 1990s, and they were literally trying to run gun manufacturers out of business. There was no, they were suing over products that functioned precisely as intended. So when Congress passed the Protection of Lawful Commerce in Arms Act, it was to prevent those lawsuits. Nothing prevents an individual from suing over a defective product, just like any other product. But once again, what we're talking about here is we're trying to use litigation in that case to shape the freedoms of, to restrict the freedoms of Americans. That's the entire intent.
Well, with that, Paul, as I let you go, one of the only, I guess, nuggets from yesterday's announcement by the Commander-in-Chief, our freedom-loving president of the United States, a very empathetic and noble man who, does what he has to do.
I just had breakfast, Joe. Don't do that to me.
Well, the one thing that I guess we could highlight here, if you want to look at something positive, is he wants the administration to issue a report on gun trafficking, and ultimately, isn't that at the end of the day which leads to all of this gun violence? Is the fact that there are illegally possessed firearms out there that commit a lot of that people have that ultimately turn into criminal acts. It's in that how that works. But as you said, when the federal government is giving guns to the Mexican cartels anyway, maybe they should be looking at themselves in their own mirror when we look at a report on gun trafficking in the country.
Well, I would agree with part of that statement. Yes, illegal guns, guns stolen, guns obtained on the street, those are the guns that are causing problems, not lawfully sold guns. That's a true statement. However, when they start talking about gun trafficking and the iron pipeline and all this other nonsense, what they're really talking about is restricting your rights because they happen to have a crime problem in the city of New York or the city of Chicago or the city of Portland or wherever else they have created it by their leftist policies. So the reality is that what they're really doing with it when they talk about gun trafficking is attempting to restrict your freedoms. To them, I ask, well, okay, so if the problem in New York with crime is guns being trafficked from, say, North Carolina, then tell me why the guns only cause a problem in New York. They don't cause a problem in North Carolina. Why is that exactly?
Paul Vallone with us here this morning, host of Guns, Politics, and Freedom. You can check out his weekly broadcast on our airwaves Saturdays and Sundays here on the Big Talker FM. Also, founder of Grassroots North Carolina, an organization for the protection of the Second Amendment and gun rights. This is obviously front and center given President Biden's announcement yesterday. Paul, thanks so much for the insight.
Well, thank you for having me, Joe. I appreciate it.
Again, that's Paul Vallone. He, along with several others, immediately after hearing this announcement from President Biden yesterday, I got on the horn, and this is one thing that we can honestly state in the way we approach our program. Listen, we don't know and pretend to know all and be the end all of commentary here in our country on, in some cases, very interesting issues and very complex topics at times. And this is why we rely on so many different resources that we've been able to develop over the course of the better part of 4 years to clarify some of these things for us and clear the air. This is why we've got friends like Paul Vallone on our program, along with Matthew Larosieri, who will be joining us in just a bit to continue this conversation from the Firearms Policy Coalition. He's the director of legal policy within that organization. He joins us just after 9 o'clock to continue this discussion. And we don't pretend like we know everything here. We want to be true to self and true to you in the way we approach our program. And when topics come up that we don't have, all of the T's crossed and the I's dotted on certain issues. This is why we bring in people a little smarter than we are on some of these specific topics to provide you the information you need to know to be informed so you can then go out and pass along the truth, because facts are stubborn things and they are often tossed to the side when we hear of government overreaching on your rights under the Constitution of the United States. Great to have Paul a part of the program.
My friend, yes.
We interrupt to bring you this horrible news. Experts say we'll see larger numbers and different breeds of mosquitoes to wreak havoc on your backyard, making this year one of the worst.
Anopheles is in Culex variety mosquito.
Yeah. Experts also say there is only one defense against this onslaught. Call the Bugman from Bugno Pest Control.
That's Mr. Bugno to you, pal.
Bugno Pest Control's mosquito-killing formula keeps your yard bug-free. Call Bugno Pest Control, 910-367-2501, or visit bugnopestcontrol.com. Take back your yard.
I'm K.O. Davis from K.O.'s Coast to Coast Tree, and I want to be your tree man.
When your trees need cut, 2 letters to know. One is a K, the other is an O. K.O.
Tree man. Proper trimming is the most important thing that you can do, so don't just hire anybody to do it. You need someone that knows what they're doing.
K.O.
Call the professionals at K.O.'s Coast to Coast Tree and visit KOTrees.com.
Hey everyone, Ben Hawkins here with Cross Country Mortgage. Rates are still at historic lows, and there has never been a better time to purchase your dream home or refinance your existing. With over 300 loan products including conventional, FHA, VA, USDA, renovation, and jumbo, we are certain we have the right loan product for you and your family. Call me today to be pre-qualified to make the offer on your next dream home. 910-352-3373 or visit my website at lendwithben.com.
Hi, I'm Dr. Gabe Frank of the Frank Institute, and I wanted to tell you about our IV vitamin, infusion, and hydration therapies. These IVs are the most effective treatment for vitamin and nutrition deficiencies available, and with our wide range of offering, your treatment can be tailored to your specific needs. Whether you struggle with hydration or nutritional deficiency, injury recovery, low energy, please feel free to check out our IV infusions today. Schedule an appointment at 910-679-8534 or check out all our treatment services at www.frankinstitute.com.
Mike check. It's the Iola Sosky here, Deputy Director of the Consumer Choice Center. You'll hear me every Friday at 9:30 on the Mornings with Joe Catenacci show, giving you the latest in consumer news, analysis, and political topics to make sure you get your consumer fix. Then hear me and my radio partner in crime, David Clement, on the Consumer Choice Radio Show, Saturdays at 10. Only here on the Big Talker 106.7 FM.
Hey, this is Matt Ham, co-founder of Uprint and the co-host of Wake Up Our Faith, every Saturday and Sunday right here in Wilmington's Big Talker. We invite you to join with our nonprofit movement by participating in the Portable Faith Community. This is a $10 a month tax-deductible contribution, and you get access to daily encouragement, resources, as well as our prayer community. You can go to wakeupmyfaith.com to get subscribed and learn more. That's wakeupmyfaith.com.
All right, as we head into hour number 3 here on the Big Talker FM at bigtalkerfm.com, you can also subscribe to our new YouTube channel. Find us at the Big Talker 106.7 FM on YouTube. Podcast version of the show available on Spotify and on my website at joecats.com. That's JOECATS.com. Matthew LaRosiere is going to join us from the Firearms Policy Coalition after the top of the hour news break to continue on this conversation following the announcement yesterday by Joe Biden on executive actions surrounding firearm reform and gun control in our country. We'll hear from Matt after the break. Before we do that, though, let me tell you about my good buddy Dennis and his organization known as Bugno Pest Control, rated the #1 pest control company in Wilmington by Home Advisor for 3 years in a row. Put Bugno's 20 years of experience to work for you. Of course, as we start to warm up across the region, moving through the spring and summer, mosquitoes can be a major concern during the warm months and can carry a number of incredibly dangerous diseases, along with being a pain in the neck for you as you try and get out and about in your backyard and doing what you typically do through these beautiful months across southeastern North Carolina. Keep yourself safe and comfortable by getting mosquito control services from an expert, the experts at Bugno Pest Control. 20 years locally owned business here in the Wilmington area. Tell them that Joe from the Big Talker sent you, and you'll get 25% off your services provided by Bugno Pest Control. That's 910-367-2501, 910-367-2501. Bugno Pest Control, online at bugnopestcontrol.com. That's BUGNO pestcontrol.com.
Keeping Ocean Isle informed. The Big Talker 106.7 FM WFBT, Carolina Beach.
March 2001. That total includes almost 53,000 encounters with people arriving as families, with only about 1 out of 3 being expelled, and the rest allowed to stay in the U.S. to pursue asylum.
Correspondent Mike Hempen. It's a gun grab. That's how critics describe President Biden's executive orders on gun control. Texas Governor Greg Abbott says his state must adopt a law that would override any new federal gun control statutes. On Twitter, the governor writes it will make Texas a Second Amendment sanctuary state. Legislation moving in the Texas House and Senate. I look forward to signing it. Britain is mourning the death of Prince Philip. The Duke of Edinburgh, the husband of Queen Elizabeth II, died this morning at Windsor Castle. Correspondent Karen Chamis in London.
His marriage both defined and constricted his life, placing the irascible, tough-minded Philip 3 steps behind the Queen in public, even if he was the head of the household in private and the dominant figure in raising 4 children. His life spanned nearly a century of European and British history, starting with his birth as a member of the Greek royal family in exile and ending with him as the longest-serving consort in British history.
Buckingham Palace says Prince Philip died peacefully this morning at Windsor Castle. He was 99 years old. Watching Wall Street ahead of this morning's opening bell, Dow futures 49 points higher, NASDAQ futures 83 points lower. More on these stories at townhall.com.
Tell me why Relief Factor is so successful in lowering or eliminating pain. I'm often asked that question. Pete and Seth Talbot, the father and son founders of Relief Factor, tell me they believe our bodies were designed to heal. The doctors who formulated Relief Factor selected the 4 best ingredients, 100% drug-free ingredients that each help your body deal with inflammation. Order the 3-week quick start now. Discount it to only $19.95 to see if it will work for you too. Call 800-500-8384. ReliefFactor.com.
Wake up, men. You're more than a job title. You're greater than the balance in the bank. Status fades, but character and courage leave a legacy that lasts. Don't let your yesterdays define your tomorrow. You were made for much more. In his sequel to the instant bestseller Kingdom Man, Tony Evans' Kingdom Men Rising urges men to embody the greatness God's already given them. Get the book, Kingdom Men Rising, to discover how.
Kingdom Men Rising from Tony Evans, sponsored by the Urban Alternative.
Been a deadly attack on a group of Nigerian army troops. The BBC covering the story.
The Nigerian military says the troops were initially declared missing after the ambush by armed men. A search and rescue team later found them dead on Thursday in Konshisha area of the state. A spokesperson for the Nigerian military told the BBC that some of the bodies were burnt. He described the attack as a heinous crime and that efforts were underway to track down the perpetrators. There have been reports that troops have fired indiscriminately, killing a number of civilians in response to the attack on soldiers. The Nigerian military has denied the allegations.
Industrial production in Germany dropping for a second consecutive month in February. It's a showing that increases the likelihood of Europe's largest economy having contracted in the first quarter. The economy ministry says production was down 2% compared with the previous month. News and analysis at townhall.com. There's a rose in full bloom amid the azaleas at Augusta.
Justin Rose has taken a remarkable 4-shot lead after the first round of the Masters. The Englishman 9 under for his last 11 holes on his way to an improbable 7 under 65 on an extremely challenging first day at the hard and fast Augusta National Course. It is the 4th time he's led the first round at Augusta, and his effort puts him 4 clear of Hideki Matsuyama and Brian Harman. Patrick Reed and Webb Simpson are among those at 2 under, with Jordan Spieth at 1 under on a day where just 12 players broke par. I'm Graham Agars.
A South Korean oil tanker that had been held for months by Iran amid a dispute over billions of dollars held in Seoul has now been freed. It happened early today ahead of additional talks between Tehran and world powers over that tattered nuclear deal. More on these stories, townhall.com.
The champ is here! The champ is here! The champ is here! The champ is here!
Let me tell you something you already know. The world ain't all sunshine and rainbows. It's a very mean and nasty place, and I don't care how tough you are, it will beat you to your knees and keep you there permanently if you let it. You, me, or nobody is gonna hit as hard as life. But it ain't about how hard you hit. It's about how hard you can get hit and keep moving forward. How much you can take and keep moving forward. That's how winning is done.
When the moon hits your eye like a big pizza pie, that's amore. When the world seems to shine like you've had too much wine, that's amore.
One of the big topics this morning, of course, across the country has to do with Joe Biden's announcement yesterday, the 46th Commander-in-Chief unveiling a set of executive actions and legislative proposals that, well, many are saying is the latest push by the government to chip away at our rights under the Constitution. We had Paul Vallone on just a few moments ago to discuss just that, and we're going to continue the conversation now with Matthew LaRosiere, who is the Director of Legal Policy at Firearms Policy Coalition. Matthew, thanks so much for spending some time with us here this morning, and I hope all is well on your end on this Friday. Good morning to you, sir. And as we bring you into the conversation, I just want to get your thoughts on some of the things that the president laid out yesterday. In fact, if he had the support in Congress on some of these measures, he would not have to skate the legislative process with executive action. Generally, what have you seen here from the president of the United States as far as new efforts, or is this kind of the tired old, same old arguments that are getting put up and refreshed by our president?
Well, so there's a few things that are, pretty frequently seen as far as administrative pushes, but the interesting one that's new is this fixation on what they're calling ghost guns.
When we talk about ghost guns, again, I'm not the smartest man in the room on all things, and I have no problem admitting it. Just give us what they are defining as what you would call ghost guns, and where are they misguided in these conversations?
Well, so all he really did in his, executive action was direct Department of Justice to basically do something about ghost guns. And so what most people are calling ghost guns are just regular old homemade firearms, which have a rich and deep history in this country, basically for as long as this country has existed, and in fact, in large part, are somewhat the reason this country does exist. So,
well, with that said,
these are just homemade firearms. Nothing crazy, nothing special about them.
Well, with that said, in this effort, of course, to chip away at our Second Amendment rights, under the Constitution, there is no doubt been a rise in gun violence across the country and violent activity all over, and that's quite evident in some of the numbers. But where are they misguided in this? In that, the legal firearm owner, who would be hampered most under these executive actions, 99% of legal firearm owners never commit a crime with a firearm. Why is it that we're trying to, fix an issue by telling the people to look at this little shiny object over here without actually addressing some of the root causes of why violent behavior continues in our country at these astronomical rates?
Well, if you just notice, the things that are fixated on in his letters are the things that are, what the news is focused on. So ghost guns, despite, homemade firearms not being used in crime terribly often at all. And then, he talks about pistol braces, which is something that the ATF has said that they have on their wish list for a long time. Again, not being something that is terribly relevant to public safety, or really something that poses any kind of public safety benefit. However, both of these things that are items that law-abiding Americans are interested in and are popular. So it really just seems to be following the trend of attacking what is popular or even affordable without even really a concern for a public safety benefit.
When it comes to legislation that is already on the books, so whether it be from from background checks to other sorts of limits on obtaining a firearm in our country for one reason or the other, if you're a felon charged and convicted of domestic violence, I mean there are a lot of laws already on the books that covers a lot of the things that are being discussed currently. what sorts of things are already on the books that, for background checks, for instance, that seem a little redundant in the way in which they're unveiling these proposals like it's something new? A lot of what has been proposed is already on the books. Why is there just such a miscommunication or a misdirection of content when we have this conversation surrounding our Second Amendment rights?
Well, so with background checks especially, it's that they seem to be going for the last bits that we have the right to do in this country. So, like with background checks, it seems they're focused on something like two people who know each other, just exchanging guns between themselves. They're now wanting to put a federal firearms licensee in between the two to charge money and again drive up costs without benefiting anyone. And again, they're misrepresenting this to people as if it was something that's focused on crime or something that's focused on public safety. It's a misdirection to just get basically what's left of our Second Amendment.
Well, with that said, there's an obvious issue with violence and gun violence, but when we look in the grand scheme of things, and I pulled out some FBI numbers recently covering about a decade from 2007 to 2017, because when a white guy with a gun carries out a heinous act with a rifle, mainly an AR-15, of course, that's the huge talking point, is that we have to ban rifles, and then we've got a white supremacist problem in our country. Yet the data shows us something different, in that you're more likely, in terms of being a victim of a violent crime, more likely to die at the hands of your perpetrator, literally by your hands, than you are an AR-15. I think the average homicide, which is nothing to be proud of when we talk about 13,600 plus people dying every year from murder and homicide in our country, we're talking 0.1% of those victims being killed by an AR-15, for instance, or a similar type of firearm. Yet it seems to be that's the machine that is always called out as far as being the weapon of mass destruction in this debate.
Right, and in reality, the vast majority of the gun death or whatever that they're focused on are actually suicides. It's extremely preposterous and dishonest. There is a lot more that we can do in this country, and in fact, if you wanted to reduce actual homicides with firearms, if you wanted to, actually make this country safer, the data seems to suggest that the thing to do would be to end the drug war. And of course, what do we see them talking about that? Absolutely not. They're fixated on the firearms that have become the most affordable and the most popular with working class, average, everyday Americans. And I think it's immoral, and I think it's disgusting.
Matthew LaRosiere is with us. He's the director of legal policy at Firearms Policy Coalition. Will your organization, along with I'm sure many others already, getting ready to all sorts of lawsuits and other types of things that you're going to bring to the court system? I'm assuming if he actually does move forward with a lot of the stuff that he laid out yesterday, I'm sure this will be tied up in the courts immediately once he signs some of these things into place.
Well, as they should be, and again, we don't really know specifically what he's going to do. This letter is kind of like a wish list to the administration, but you can be sure that we'll be watching very closely, and we are very ready to act.
Along with some of the proposals that he laid out yesterday, he suggested that what we know as red flag legislation should be considered, meaning if you don't like your neighbor, he possesses a firearm, you file a report with law enforcement, and the next thing you know, they're raiding your neighbor's home and taking and stripping his rights away and taking his firearm for whatever reason that you may have claimed as being the disgruntled neighbor who maybe doesn't like the fact that his lawn has too much grass on it in the summer months. I mean, is this just where we're going to get to at this point if you move forward these sorts of laws?
Well, and I mean, I'm sure you've noticed there was nothing on here that was really new or interesting or helpful. All it was all this is pushing harder on the stuff that they think they can get. And I think it's just super inappropriate for the feds to be suggesting states, what states should be enacting here. It's really an overstep, to be sure.
Well, and then with the President of the United States going as far as saying that no amendment or the Constitution is not absolute, and then pushes executive action, there are processes and procedures, in fact, to amend the Constitution and change laws, and that is the role and responsibility of Congress. So, wouldn't he be better suited to push those efforts through that legislative body than ruling as a king, as we've all become accustomed to over the past year with the ways in which certain states have handled the pandemic? Is it just more or less because he doesn't have the support, particularly in the Senate, to move a lot of this forward, so he uses his executive powers to try and get this through?
Well, to be sure, and again, there's a fixation with guns, and I think that these people just absolutely hate them. There is no public safety benefit to any of these suggestions. No real public safety benefit. I do think that this is just a fixation and a hatred of firearms that is, again, like you were saying, it's only calculated to erode our rights. It is not calculated to make us any safer.
And, again, when we look at what's been going on in our inner cities, the ways in which we have seen, constant, violent activity. You made an example there with the so-called war on drugs. How's that worked out for the better part of the last 40 years? Not so well. We've had the record overdoses and all sorts of issues with that. You look at the combination of bail reform, the defund the police type of movement that we've seen across the country. Isn't this kind of a perfect storm? And of course, they're able to just blame the guns and firearms for the problem. But there's like 7 different examples that we can bring up immediately just off the top of our head, saying, well, maybe we should look at these types of things if you're really concerned about violence and gun violence in our country.
Well, yeah, it's funny how history seems to repeat itself. After alcohol prohibition and the government started getting violent to enforce that, suddenly that's when we, started seeing suggestions for banning handguns, and until we wound up with the National Firearms Act. In reality, all they're doing is what they've been doing forever. They're targeting affordable firearms. They're targeting the working class American. All they know how to do is increase the cost of exercising your Second Amendment rights in this country. And I think that it's essential that we notice that and see that that is the focus here, is to just attack the working class American. Because you can bet that no matter what happens, this isn't going to affect, the highly privileged, the, white shoed American. It's going to affect those who work for a living and just want to keep their family safe.
Matthew Loricieri is the Director of Legal Policy at Firearms Policy Coalition. Matthew, how can we keep up to date on some of the things that you're going to be highlighting, I'm sure, over the next several weeks as this conversation continues up in Washington?
Well, again, you can follow Firearms Policy Coalition. You can also follow me on Twitter. That's at MATTLA at law, Matt Law at law.
And you do great work, which is why we contacted you to try and provide some clarity on this issue, as they try and muddy up the waters as they typically do, and tell you to look at that little shiny object over there while they stick it to the everyday American. It's what they do best up in Washington.
That's right.
And thanks a lot, Matthew.
Thank you for having me.
We're 21 minutes past the hour here on the Big Talker FM. Again, you can find out more about what they do at Firearms Policy Coalition. They do great work in highlighting some of the efforts that we're seeing right now, of course, across the country, and unveiled yesterday by President Biden some of these executive actions they want to take against the legal firearm owner. That's firearmspolicy.org, their website. We'll be back.
We interrupt to bring you this horrible news. Experts say we'll see larger numbers and different breeds of mosquitoes to wreak havoc on your backyard, making this year one of the worst.
Anopheles and Culex variety of mosquito.
Yeah. Experts also say there is only one defense against this onslaught. Call the Bugman from Bugno Pest Control.
That's Mr. Bugno to you, pal.
Bugno Pest Control's mosquito-killing formula keeps your yard bug-free. Call Bugno Pest Control, 910-367-2501, or visit bugnopestcontrol.com. Take back your yard.
One Love Tennis started in 2013 to give back to young boys and girls. We now go through 460 kids a week that are learning about life skills, learning to succeed in life through academics and tennis. Putting those two together, if you do them well, you can write your own ticket. To get involved in this program, go to our website, one-love-tennis.org.
Hear Tom Goolsbee on the Joe Catenacci Show.
People with common sense know that the entire theory of socialism is one big lie.
The Big Talker 106.7 FM.
Tune in on Friday mornings to hear The Construction Connection, a collaborative effort between Joe Catenacci with the Big Talker FM and Cameron Moore, the executive officer of the Wilmington Cape Fear Home Builders Association. You start the conversation and we bring you the answers as we take a regional, in-depth look at growth-related topics and issues centered around the residential and commercial development and building industry. The Construction Connection, Friday mornings on the Big Talker FM.
Hey, I'm Yael Osowski.
And I'm David Clement.
We're the host of Consumer Choice Radio, broadcasting every Saturday at 10 a.m. here on the Big Talker 106.7 FM.
Consumer Choice Radio is a weekly conversation featuring the latest news, interviews, and expert analysis that covers consumer topics from around the world.
ConsumerChoiceRadio.com.
O'Leary's Automotive Repair has multiple locations in the area in Hampstead, Leland, the Myrtle Grove area, Ogden, and Wrightsboro. O'Leary's Automotive Repair, a trusted, locally owned business since 2006. Looks like a beautiful day along southeastern North Carolina, and we're broadcasting once again from Arlington, Texas, right in the middle of the Dallas-Fort Worth area. We'll be here through Monday, and on Monday morning we'll be back with our latest remote program as we have moved through the spring from Morgantown, West Virginia, Lafayette, Louisiana, now here in Arlington, Texas. In a couple of weeks, we'll be in Lynchburg, Virginia, before we take on Liberty University in a 3-game series with broadcasts later on this year and spring planned for Atlanta, Georgia, and Mobile, Alabama, along with Montgomery, Alabama, as we move towards the back end of May and into early June. So we've got a lot still ahead on our plate. Our phone number is 910-299-7535. If you're tuned in through our Facebook feed, looks like a great morning along the coast. We're in the middle of landlocked Texas, a very free and open state in present day, as their Governor Abbott, has lifted so many of the restrictions and most of the mandates that had been in place for much of the past year. They're operating about as freely as it gets across the country, relatively speaking, as compared to other states within the union. In fact, later on tonight, not that I'm the biggest fan of Major League Baseball these days, with the spineless commissioner and their executive team announcing last week that they would be relocating the MLB All-Star Game from Atlanta, Georgia. Of course, we've highlighted some of the laws that have been changed and tweaked as it relates to elections in the Peach State. And, to call it as we see it, there were some things included in that law that was signed by Governor Kemp that did and do present some questions and could be debated. But overall, the overarching theme here from many that I follow, as far as those who cover news and information and have dug deep into the legislation, like actually reading the bill before just using talking points from the mainstream media or the Democrat Party, that by and large, those efforts in Georgia actually expand voting opportunities at the end of the day. While there are some things that could present questions into the future as far as handling and overseeing the election process within that state, rather than, of course, examining what went on, allowing some air to come into the room for everyone to take a deep breath. Major League Baseball fell to the cancel culture and those woke officials and members of the media, and rather than showing a spine and waiting to see how things sort itself out, they moved full steam ahead, as we've seen many CEOs of big corporations do, in jumping to conclusions and regurgitating a lot of those talking points rather than specifically calling out some things that they have issues with and why, in fact, we should boycott places like the state of Georgia for moving forward with changes to their laws. This is an issue that continues to, of course, top the news nationally. That said, here in the state of Texas, again, with things being largely wide open, the Texas Rangers and their organization have moved forward with allowing full capacity within their new ballpark this spring and summer and throughout the grind of a Major League Baseball season. So I've got some time later on tonight after practice, and I think I may make myself way over to the Texas Rangers ballpark. They'll play the San Diego Padres. Looking at tickets here this morning, so I may get to do that and enjoy a ball game with a mass capacity of crowds in attendance here in the state of Texas. Of course, some other topics nationally that are garnering a lot of attention, at least through certain media outlets. Not that if you were to go to CNN or other mainstream news publications, the alphabet networks, or anyone that tilts to the left of the political spectrum, you're not going to find much information, of course, on the mess of a situation that's going on at our southern border. At first, it was nothing. Then as the news continued to pour in and it was hard to distract everyone from the situation along our border with Mexico, you have seen the administration at least pay some attention to it. Of course, the commander-in-chief, along with the person he put in charge of overseeing the situation going on, the crisis at our border. Vice President Kamala Harris is still yet to make a trip down that way. Apparently, the Department of Homeland Security Secretary will be going towards the southern border here in Texas in the not-so-distant future. And we've heard from the DHS Secretary also talk about, quote-unquote, filling the gaps along our southern border where the wall had been stopped as far as the construction of that barrier, which has deterred mass levels of immigration over the last several years, where it has been updated, upgraded, and put into place. The Biden administration, on their first day, signed an executive order, the commander-in-chief, halting the construction of that wall. Here now, 3 months later, realizing that, in fact, maybe President Trump was onto something in deterring illegal border crossings along that vast border, and, in fact, now feel that they're going to plug the gaps. And this is, of course, the totally misconstrued conversation about illegal immigration, those that are at our southern border being detained, let freely back into the country. In some instances, they're actually flying these illegal migrants to certain states across the country that are willing to accept them with no sort of immigration hearing on the docket for them, disappearing into the shadows. Reaching a breaking point situation, overcrowded trailer park jails along the southern border. Yeah, that's what I called them, trailer park jails. They're not facilities, they're not detention centers. Of course, they were cages under the Trump administration. Well, now they look like a bunch of trailer park jails. And it's reached a breaking point, a capacity limit, a decision to stop all gains, to continue efforts under the prior administration to secure areas along the border. Legislation that had been put forth under the Trump administration that would have been, really, for those who want to see things totally reinvented as far as the immigration system. There were at times some bipartisan talks to give and take within Washington, D.C. but many of the leftist Democrats held their ground. They wanted, for instance, DACA or nothing, in turn to fund the wall construction, including Vice President Harris was opposed to bipartisan legislation that would have given thousands of people an opportunity in our country through DACA to obtain citizenship in our country while we continue to work to fund border security. Many Democrats were against that proposal, and henceforth it did not move forward. And now, encouraging more and more people to try and get in, which has created this situation at hand when you've got the commander-in-chief talking about, of course, incentivizing those who live in dire circumstances throughout much of Central America into South America, and here we are now. A couple of weeks back, remember the Department of Homeland Security Secretary telling us there's nothing to worry about. And now the administration can't hide the fact that what's going on at the border is not good for anyone. In fact, the New York Times had a recent headline talking about the Biden administration and their efforts to quietly press Mexico to curb migrants coming into the U.S., a move that echoes the policies of Donald J. Trump. But I thought Orange Man was bad, and he was a racist and inhumane in the way he looked at the situation going on along our southern border. Well, anyone that can look at this objectively and straight on knows that President Trump had the right idea when he talked about and made efforts to deter the situation that we see playing out in a grand scale now along our southern border. We've hit the bottom of the hour. Yael Asowski with the Consumer Choice Center will join us after the break as we head into the final half hour of our broadcast week here on the Big Talker FM.
Oh, my range. They got a lot of nice girls. I'm racing.
Hello, I'm Jeff Rivenbark with WWAY News. Authorities say a man opened fire yesterday afternoon at a Texas cabinet-making company where he worked, killing one person and wounding 5 others. A police statement says 27-year-old Larry Winston Boland of Iola, Texas, has been charged with murder and being held on a $1 million bond. Authorities say Boland shot and wounded a state trooper before he was arrested. 2 of the 5 people wounded at the cabinet business are in critical condition. The 3 others and the trooper are in serious but stable condition. Police say Boland worked at the company. The town of Charlotte has turned an abandoned building into a vaccination site. During Hurricane Florence, parts of Coastal Cinema's roof were torn off. It's now shut down with a parking lot being leased for COVID-19 vaccinations. The National Guard and Brunswick County vaccinate about 500 people each day. Emergency Management Director Edward Conrose says it's an ideal location with a large parking lot that can serve many people at once. Another big festival in the area canceled again because of the pandemic. The Blueberry Festival in Burgaw will not happen this year. Town leaders say they made the decision to cancel in an effort to protect vendors, volunteers, and visitors. The event typically attracts 40,000 people, and the current state mandate prohibits gatherings of that size. However, local blueberry farmers will be allowed to sell their blueberries at the Burgaw Courthouse Square on Saturday, June 19th. And weather forecasters are predicting an above-normal hurricane season this year. Colorado State University is calling for 17 named storms, 8 hurricanes, and 4 major hurricanes. The seasonal average is 12 named storms, 6 hurricanes, and 3 major hurricanes. Current warm sea surface temperatures in the subtropic Atlantic is driving the above-average probability. For more on these stories, head over to WWAYTV3.com. I'm Jeff Rivenbark. Have a great day.
Happy Friday, everybody. I'm WWAY meteorologist Ramel Carpenter with your Storm Track 3 forecast. We're going to see another day with warm temperatures getting back into the upper 70s and low 80s across those inland communities. Highs along the immediate coastline will top off in the middle 70s. And we're going to see a mixture of sunshine and clouds throughout the afternoon hours today with a chance for some hit or miss showers and even isolated thunderstorms possible as we get into the second half of the day. But again, most places are going to stay dry, and late tonight, our temperatures drop back down into the upper 50s and the low 60s. Get your full forecast on WWAY and WWAYTV3.com.
This news and weather is brought to you by 2 Men and a Truck. For your free quote, go to 2menandatruck.com. 2menandatruck.com.
Yael Lasowski with the Consumer Choice Center joins us here this morning. Consumer Choice Radio airs on the Big Talker FM at 10 a.m. on Saturday mornings throughout our broadcast week. We engage in great local commentary, and those partners of ours that you hear throughout much of the weekend, beginning right at 8 a.m. with our friend Matt Ham and Kevin Adams, Wake Up Our Faith, and that continues through around 2 o'clock each afternoon on Saturdays. Yael and his tag team partner, David Clement, a part of that broadcast schedule. We always look forward to tuning in to Consumer Choice Radio on the Big Talker FM, now also syndicated up north of the border in Ontario, Toronto as well. Yael, it's a pleasure, my friend. I hope all is well in Vienna this morning.
Yes, sir. I probably not as good as they are right now in Texas, but I hope you're having a good time and great to be back on the air.
I mean, don't be jelly. I had some Texas barbecue yesterday. Did not have to wear a mask while entering the restaurant. Was not shamed in doing so. And things are operating very freely here in the Lone Star State these days.
Joe, I have not had a haircut since December. So I think that tells you everything you need to know.
Well, and with that said, not only the haircut, you do. How did the smoking of thy meat go for yourself last week? Because I remember, what was it, Bank at Thanksgiving? You had the cops called on you for going out into the empty courtyard and smoking meat for a couple of hours against the law.
I think it was a 2-point, success. Number one is the neighbors are now used to me smoking some meat on the weekends. And number two is I improved my technique, so I put a lot more flame onto those charcoals in the beginning and then threw on the wood a bit later. It's all in the technique, Joe, and also in how much your neighbors are actually going to tolerate. So fortunately, no cops, and a very good Easter.
Yeah, of course, for myself, enjoying some nice brisket and ham last night here in Texas. And, I'm going to continue to rub that in your face here this morning, Yael. When we talk about the Consumer Choice Center and your efforts to advocate for consumer choice across the country, what's kind of on your mind this week as we get the segment underway?
Yeah, I think there's been a lot in the news, and pretty much anyone who has had an email address in the last couple of years, you've probably seen that there have been a lot of data leaks, there have been hacks, there's been all kinds of spillage when it comes to your personal data. That's something that I know a lot of people are pretty worried about. Everyone is likely checking and refreshing their credit scores a lot. There is a lot of identity theft that goes out there. So one thing that we wanted to do is figure out, all right, we know that this stuff is happening. We know that some companies are just dropping the ball. We know that some states like California and Vermont have rules, but they're actually terrible because they actually don't allow a good amount of investment and entrepreneurship. So we put together a couple of recommendations to policymakers as to what they should do for data and consumer privacy. Anyone who goes to Target and they swipe their rewards card, that information is packaged and it is sent off. In some cases, it is sold. And people want to know where their data is going, and they want to know that it is being protected. And I think that's something that a lot of people are very attuned to. Unfortunately, as in many circumstances, the more zealous politicians would love to pass laws that make it the more difficult to actually have a data economy. So what we kind of conclude in our report and what we're putting together is that we need to be championing innovation when it comes to data. I know that in Wilmington, there's a growing IT sector. There's a lot of people who are dealing with information and data and everything related to customers buying products, to what we're seeing online and targeted advertising. We need to allow that innovation to exist. In the European Union, there's a lot of terrible laws that make it almost impossible. I can't even read the Charlotte Observer or Port City Daily while I'm sitting in my home here in Austria. I have to turn on a VPN in order to do so because no American companies want to open themselves up to lawsuits from the Europeans. So that's bad. We definitely have to champion innovation. We need to avoid patchwork legislation on this stuff. We need to have some kind of federal bill that looks at the rules and also allow a lot of encryption. And that's something that particularly the FBI is not too keen on. They don't like the idea of people being able to encrypt their messages or their data, but we think it's actually vital to our freedoms. I mean, you could say it's a Fourth Amendment fight as well. So we put this report together. It's over there on consumerchoicecenter.org. Hopefully there's some good nuggets for some people who might be interested in this topic. I know it's a budgeting industry. There's a lot of stuff that's happening with data. We just want to be sure that we have responsible actors, we have good innovations, and I think that's a good way that consumers are going to be really happy with the innovations we have in the future.
ConsumerChoiceCenter.org is their website. You can find out more about the global grassroots movement for consumer choice, along with the article Yael just pointed out, again, at ConsumerChoiceCenter.org. Yael, in your efforts in comparing life in Vienna, life in, say, your native land of Canada, life in places like New York and California, as compared to where I'm at in Texas, the state of Florida, it's pretty amazing, how the media is able to jump on a narrative and continue to run it. And it seems like public enemy number one right now in the news media is Florida Governor Ron DeSantis. I'm not sure if he had to get a spray tan and dye his hair blonde, if they really want to continue this way in life in treating him in a Trump-esque type of way. This guy continues to fight back, though. He's not letting any stone be unturned here. He takes criticisms. He's going to fire right back. And I thought the 60 Minutes package was just completely ridiculous. And no wonder why the media has such low credibility ratings among the viewing public these days with that sort of stuff making national news.
And it just proves to you, Joe, exactly why we need alternative media. We need to have very good, robust social media, and we need to have good, robust talk radio where people can discuss this stuff. We saw the 60 Minutes piece on Florida Governor DeSantis was just an absolute hatchet job. It was just terrible. And as Florida is basically proving to be a model in many circumstances, particularly how they were able to avoid lockdowns, how they're able to drop their case numbers, and how they're able to increase their vaccination numbers. Pretty much all the people who are in the Northeast media would love to condemn Florida and say that they're doing all the wrong things, but they're actually have been doing the best things, and they've actually been following many of the scientific recommendations, and they've used the capacity of local markets, local pharmacies. I mean, to know that Publix is able to dole these things out is amazing. Anyone who's ever been to Florida know it's Publix country. I know, Joe, you're not the biggest fan, but at least in Florida, it's the standard. And when I lived there, I lived outside of Tampa, Publix was almost a religion. And to see that DeSantis took recommendations from local leaders and set up that deal is amazing. But to those who would like to criticize Florida, would like to criticize the governor, they see that as some kind of nefarious affair or arrangement. Meanwhile, we obfuscate exactly what's happening in the state of New York and what happened with the nursing homes and all kinds of terrible deals when it comes to following the science. So I think it's just a way to distract from what's happening in New York. I think a lot of people who are listening to this are pretty tired of it. They want to know the good news. Florida gives us the great news. It gives us a beacon of sunshine. And to see that there were members of the media that were cutting it down, I think is really unfortunate. And if we could actually issue our own Pinocchios, a big talker Pinocchio, definitely 60 Minutes and CBS would have one, at least the last couple of weeks.
It's so sad in that, the inability to get real credible information and stories told to you in a straightforward manner from our legacy news media outlets, in my mind, is why I continue to question a lot of this situation surrounding COVID. Maybe some say that I'm not taking it seriously enough, or of course, my words get taken out of context all the time based on what we do here in giving opinions on a daily basis. But the whole way this whole thing has been covered from the very get-go, presents a lot of questions in regards to COVID in particular, that many people are still very hesitant, say, to get a vaccine at this point because of the misguidedness and the inappropriateness, frankly, to cover this situation objectively and accurately. So you can see, why people have these types of feelings and are hesitant to get all on board with certain things when they can't get a story given to you straight.
Yeah, and we saw the numbers in North Carolina. I think it was a report by the NC Watchdog Reporting Network showing that across all the major health systems in the state, it's only between 40 and 75% of hospital staff members who are vaccinated. And they were one of the first ones to be able to get it. I don't really know the reason for that.
It could be some of the things that you mentioned before. I haven't seen too much reporting on that. Why do we have so much hesitancy on the part of people who are working in our hospitals? Now, I'm definitely all in because, I'm still going to put my stake in the ground and say once we can get a certain vaccination number, there's no way they can continue to justify lockdowns or shutting things down or stopping people from playing outside sports. So I still think that is the way to do it. And I do think North Carolina is doing very, very well, has been able to put out good numbers. People are getting their first shots. Johnson & Johnson's rolling out like crazy. I know there's a lot of people who are still skeptical, but in a way, if we're able to get that promise of basically ridding the governmental levers of lockdowns, I think it's something that many people will have to do. Of course, this is a personal decision. It should never be a law that people have to do that in order to be a citizen or something like this. But I do think it is a way out, and at that point, they will have no more justification to say that we need to do 2 weeks to stop the curve or any of this stuff. We can actually get back to normal. We can get people working again. And I think really if we have the vaccination numbers to prove it, North Carolina can be just as free as Florida or any other state, and I think that'll provide a model too.
Well, with that being said, Yael, I think now many people are already questioning why we're not continuing to move forward with the reopening of many states. Given what is it here in North Carolina, we've got something like 27-28% of the population fully vaccinated. You add in those who have already contracted the coronavirus over the last year, and you're looking at somewhere around half, or if not more than half, the population that has already moved forward with this in one way, shape, or form through the vaccination or dealing with the virus after contracting it, that many people are saying this is long past due already to start to reopen things and continue to move in that direction. And I think by and large it's because, again, we're being told even if you're vaccinated, on an airplane yesterday telling us even if you're vaccinated, you still have to wear your mask and keep your distance. The first question that comes up in my mind is, well, why are we then being vaccinated if we're still being told we have to live life like we've been for the past year? And no one can answer that question, or no one addresses that issue or question that we have.
It's a good point, and I think the muddying of the waters or the poisoning of the well by the CDC adds to a lot of that. The fact that they're still trying to issue guidelines as to what you can do when you're vaccinated is absolutely ridiculous. Every study shows that essentially you've built up an immunity now. You have less of an opportunity or less of a chance of catching a major COVID-19 infection, so we should be able to go back to normal. And I understand the theater of it a little bit. That's why Biden is still, even though he's been vaccinated since I don't even know when, still walks around with 18 masks. And there are a lot of people who do that. And yeah, there's a little bit element of theater of it. They're afraid that if they don't put on the mask and do everything else, people are going to be reluctant to continue doing that as we continue with vaccinations, which is not a good approach to take. I mean, there's all kinds of studies in public health about how you communicate with the public. Anyone has seen a disaster movie on Netflix, and the way that you communicate with the public is incredibly important. And if they continue to lie to us or give us noble lies, which is what happened in the beginning when it came to masks, they didn't want people going out to Lowe's and Home Depot and buying all the masks they could, that's not going to make the public trust you more. There's definitely a crisis of confidence. We have seen a lot of issues with the CDC and the FDA specifically. They haven't even technically approved any vaccine. They're all emergency use authorizations. So I don't understand why that isn't happening. We've had plenty of trials in different countries. The FDA and the CDC have been very slow. They actually just approved, Joe, the very first at-home rapid test, which is absolutely ridiculous. I've had access to this in Austria for the past 8 months, and the FDA and CDC just approved the first one now, a year into this. They really dropped the ball. They monopolized the testing in the beginning, and I think a lot of people are not going to forget this, and that means it's going to be an open territory when it comes to reforms for many of these public health bodies. We can't look at this as a success of our health institutions. We have to look at this as a success of our businesses, our innovators, and those in the private sector that have delivered us a lot of these vaccines, because that's the ticket out. It's not going to be some guidance form from the CDC.
Well, of course, and to circle back, because we enjoy doing that on this program, in September of last year, when President Trump at the time was talking about Americans and their ability to get vaccinated, all Americans by April of this year, where we currently stand, the health experts told us that it was not likely and a far-fetched dream by the then commander-in-chief. Yet here we are in the state of North Carolina, and starting back on Wednesday, what do you know? All adults in North Carolina are now eligible to receive the COVID-19 vaccination. So again, if they were able to put their hatred for one man aside for just a moment and provide us, some, legitimate information, and then maybe people would be a little less hesitant to question everything we hear when we've heard so much flip-flopping, when we are being told to continue to operate like we've been for the past year, even though we're continuing to ramp up the vaccinations. And then anytime we question some of this stuff, we're basically told just to be quiet and go back to our corner and do what we're told. And that's not something that we enjoy being told, if for many of us across the country, especially when it pertains to the government. Yael Lasowski of the Consumer Choice Center with us. Yael, I know you've also touched on the situation going on in Georgia in regards to election law and how MLB kind of caved in almost an instant manner once they received some pressure from sponsors and other types of corporate entities in regards to the All-Star Game, pressure from political folks. In my mind, as the former commissioner of baseball said, Fay Vincent, in an article in the Wall Street Journal, said, why don't we just pump the brakes on this a little bit, let the dust settle, and then move forward with something, if we feel we need to. Instead, we see all of these CEOs and different corporate entities, jumping immediately, every time they face some criticism. Whatever happened to, big business and, the American entrepreneur, standing steadfast against, something just because public pressure is building against them?
Yeah, it's the ongoing theme of politicizing absolutely everything. It continues. And I think in this circumstance, there is someone that we can kind of look at to blame. There's more reporting coming out on this. But Stacey Abrams, who has still not conceded her defeat for the gubernatorial race in Georgia all these years later because of voter fraud, basically she was very much involved in putting pressure on MLB and also to the Biden administration. And in the end, when people started tabulating how much Atlanta will lose, around $100 million, and a lot of that is going to impact a lot of minority businesses. Atlanta is about 50% African American. You take away all that investment, all the people who are going to come to town, all the companies that were going to spend money on splashy banners and logos and everything else, that's a lot of money they're losing out on now. And that's why you kind of saw this capitulation by Biden on the Masters. They say, well, if we're doing this for the MLB, shouldn't the same standard be applied to our golfers, coming to the greatest golf tournament in the world? And then it was, the impact on working people. Look, everything that government does impacts working people in a positive or negative way. This is overwhelmingly negative. And I think a lot of the media analysis on the Georgia bill was obviously very wrong. Much of it was based on just terrible, I would say, activism. It was not necessarily based in fact. Georgia's laws in no way are stricter than in the state of New York or New Jersey. And to compare that to a Jim Crow of the new era, or as Joe Biden called it, Jim Eagle, it's just bad. It's malpractice. It's rather slanderous. We see again that a major sports institution is basically dragged into this. All the companies are dragged into it. There's not going to be many winners here. And, these are a lot of lessons that we've learned in North Carolina over the years. And I really don't see a good end for this. I think what we need is just people criticizing this and understanding the facts, listening to programs like yours. And I think then we can all make better judgments. And the people who are trying to avoid risk in, large Fortune 500 companies or in large sporting leagues, they're going to have to stay attuned to that. You can't run away from the woke crowd. Always, you sometimes need to stand up a bit for your principles.
And really, at the end of the day, if they just remain silent on it for a few extra days, let the cycle play out, let everything be discussed, put it all out in open air, then they could have moved forward and said, listen, after further review, to put forth a vague statement on a Friday afternoon leading into a holiday weekend without citing any sort of specifics, I think just makes it look worse than anything is. If you were going to decide to move it one way or the other, it just again. The impact that the media and the narrative has on business really just frankly needs to stop, and we need more and more people to step up and stand out against this type of stuff. Yet we continue to see big business cozying on up to the activists these days. It wasn't once like this. Typically, the corporate America was the evil one, was the bullseye and target for a lot of these same groups and organizations that are now working alongside each other.
Yeah, the woke companies, this thing needs to stop. They don't exist to try to play a role in the culture war. Companies are there to provide us services and products and to make our lives better, not to weigh in on all kinds of matters of policy and to figure out which way the culture war should go. If we continue to grow this culture war, we basically all lose, at various levels. So I think if we can have a nice separation of church and state, a separation of sports and politics, a separation of business and the culture war, I think we'd be a lot better off. I don't buy my Tide or drink my Budweiser to understand what my values are. These are products that I consume, and I'm the one who determines my values. I don't need my companies to tell me that. I know what they are, so I think a lot of this is very infantilizing. A lot of it's got to stop, and I think that's hopefully a better way forward, Joe. I know the sports stuff is definitely got to tick you off. You're on the road. You're commenting on baseball games across the nation, and then you go, at the major league level, you have all this politics unfurling. It's definitely got to be a whirlwind.
Yeah, it's just not fun it just is not fun to view. It's not fun to watch. It's not fun to follow. And it takes, the enjoyment of the game just out of it for the everyday fan when they're being, having to put into a position where they got to take a side one way or the other based on some, political conversation in this, world of sport. It's incredibly sad for the city of Atlanta and Major League Baseball to move forward with this decision. Yeah, it's always a pleasure, my friend. We'll tune into you tomorrow morning at 10 a.m. here on the Big Talker FM.
Thank you so much, Joe. All the best.
ConsumerChoiceCenter.org, their website. You can find out more about what they do, why they do it, the global grassroots movement for consumer choice at ConsumerChoiceCenter.org. Connecting folks from around the world here this morning, from Vienna, Austria to Arlington, Texas, and back home to the coast of North Carolina in what looks to be a beautiful day here across the region and a weekend ahead. You get out and enjoy it. We're getting ready for Coastal Carolina baseball this upcoming weekend. We've got 3 games with UT Arlington tomorrow, Sunday. Monday, we'll be back here broadcasting again from the Lone Star State before we make the trek back home to the coast. Hope you enjoyed the broadcast as much as I did here this morning. We're signing off another Freedom Friday in the books here on the Big Talker FM. Have a great weekend, everyone.
Keeping Oak Island informed. The Big Talker 106.7 FM WFBT, Carolina Beach.
I'm probably okay to have one more drink before I drive home. I'm probably okay. I open the window to stay alert. Probably okay. I just popped some gum in my mouth.
Step out of the car, please.
I probably made a mistake.
Probably okay isn't okay when it comes to drinking and driving. If you see a warning sign, stop and call a cab, a car, or a friend. Buzzed driving is drunk driving. A message brought to you by NHTSA and the Ad Council.
O'Leary's Automotive Repair has multiple locations in the area in Hampstead, Leland, the Myrtle Grove area, Ogden, and Wrightsboro. O'Leary's Automotive Repair, a trusted, locally owned business since 2006.
diplomat offered a sobering assessment Thursday of what's to come unless the United States joins Mexico in development aid for the Northern Triangle of Central America. Foreign Relations Secretary Marcelo Ebrard said he expects constant and growing flows of migrants in coming years. Ebrard said Mexico is proposing investing money in Honduras, Guatemala, and El Salvador, the three countries sending the largest number of migrants to the U.S. southern border. Ebrard said Mexico expects the United States to join in the development aid, and he estimated the U.S.